Top of the week edition of Reality Check here on WURD. It's the home of Black Talk Media, 96.1 FM, 900 AM, WordRadio.com, Word TV, and Word app. I'm Charles Ellison. I'm your host, executive producer, creator, as always, of Reality Check, your daily dose of public affairs here on WURD. Welcome to the program. Welcome to the top of this Reality Check week. Lots of reality checks happening throughout the nation and throughout the world. And so, particularly in certain places that many of us have been focused on all weekend. We'll talk a little bit about that today, of course, here on Reality Check, and try to cover as much ground as we can cover here throughout the week. Also, this week, starting tomorrow, and then on Wednesday, we're having we are going to be hosting and facilitating major and live panel discussions on one, critical race theory, and also on reparations. So there's a big panel discussion that we're doing in partnership with the Council of State Governments, more specifically the Eastern Regional Conference, but of which Pennsylvania is a member. But the we're partnering with the Council of State Governments to bring you an exclusive panel of experts who will be discussing critical race theory. Critical race theory, of course, that's a big topic. It's a big debate over that. And also it is being legislated in a number of ways in state capitals. So we're going to unpack that and try to help you understand that debate and that conversation a little bit more, bring some sense to it. And we'll be doing that in the discussion that's going to be taking place tomorrow here on Reality Check, live on Reality Check, exclusively on Reality Check and on WURD. The next day on Wednesday, and we're doing this as a part of the Council of State Governments annual conference, which is being held virtually, of course, again this year. It actually would have taken place, I believe it would have taken place in Toronto, Canada this summer, but that did not happen. And actually, we were making plans last year to broadcast Reality Check WURD from Manchester, New Hampshire for that summit last year, just as we did the year before in Pittsburgh, and we were going to do it again in Toronto this year. But of course, pandemic had other plans, and particularly the Delta variant. So we're going to be doing that virtually, have a discussion on critical race theory that's taking place, and then on Thursday, we have a discussion on reparations, and especially the debate, the conversation that's taking place in state capitals, how policymakers are now looking at reparations more realistically. What does that look like if that's something we move forward with? What does that look like on a smaller scale if we don't get anything sooner on the bigger national scale, like what's being proposed on Capitol Hill? But we will be having that discussion, exclusive panel, that'll be taking place at the top of the Wednesday edition here on Reality Check. So just stay tuned for that. Should be, in fact, on one of those panels is our very own Michael Cord. Michael Cord will be joining as one of the panelists in those discussions. So definitely look forward to a great and informative discussion. It's something that people can walk away with and feel like they understand exactly what's going on. So that's the whole purpose of it, and appreciate the Council of State Governments partnering with us as always. 215-634-8065. The phone lines are open. 215-634-8065. 866-361-0900 here on Reality Check. Phone lines are open at 215-634-8065. 866-361-0900 here on Reality Check. Phone lines are wide open at this point. And then a little bit later on at 10 o'clock hour, we have our roundtable session. We have Dr. G.S. Potter and also Dr. David Love. I don't know why it was called David Doctor, but I guess that's because he teaches at places like Rutgers. But anyway, we have Dr. G.S. Potter and also David Love. They'll be on tap for our roundtable coming up a little bit later on in this hour. So looking forward to that conversation. 215-634-8065, 866-361-0900 here on Reality Check. Now, clearly, obviously, all weekend, people have been talking about what's been taking place in Afghanistan. Very historic events unfolding in Afghanistan after 20 years of U.S. military presence in Afghanistan. And this is happening on the 20th year anniversary mark or observance mark of that tragic, horrific day on September 11th. We're coming up on the 20th anniversary of the September 11th attack on the Twin Towers in New York City, and also the Pentagon, the attack on the Pentagon in Washington, D.C., greatest or the most devastating, destructive attack on American soil since Pearl Harbor in 1941. So that happened in 2001. So we were coming up on the 20th anniversary. So now here we are on the eve of the 20th, the official 20th observance of that horrific day that many of us remember, and also the 20th anniversary of the U.S. military invasion of Afghanistan in response to that attack. And so the Taliban, the government that we had, basically took Afghanistan from in response to that attack, is now retaking control, or has officially retaken control of Afghanistan. The Taliban occupation, or not even occupation, but the Taliban invasion or reoccupation of all parts of Afghanistan is complete. They are in the presidential palace in Kabul. So right now there are just reports of chaos and panic at the Kabul airport, as you have thousands of U.S. troops who are stationed there and who are quickly and rapidly moving American personnel and others out of Afghanistan. And so they're there. They have a very significant and very heavy U.S. troop presence to make sure that that evacuation is as orderly and safe for American assets as possible. So that's what's going on there. We'd love to get everyone's thoughts. Of course, much of this predictable. People, different civilizations and empires have been schooled about Afghanistan since the 8th century, since the Arabs were trying to consolidate Afghanistan under their rule in the 8th century. And then I think it was the Mongol Empire found out the hard way in the 13th century. Then something called the Mongols tried to consolidate power in Afghanistan in the, I think that was in like the 15th to the 17th, no, 15th to the 18th century. So they had loose rule over Afghanistan. Then the British really found out the hard way. The British thought, okay, well, we'll use money and a little bit of military. And that didn't work out. That was in the 19th century. And then the Russians, being the Soviet Union at that point, did it again in the late 20th century. That definitely didn't work out. And so now here we are, the Americans, thought that they were going to do something different. The Americans got cocky because they rolled in hard and quick in 2001 in their invasion of Afghanistan, and then they teamed up with different anti-Taliban warlords who were, who didn't appreciate the Taliban rule, and so they teamed up with U.S. Special Forces, etc. They rolled in hard and quick, and so they thought, okay, we can do this. We can do this differently from how everyone else did it. No, you can't. So you might want to talk to the Arabs from the 8th century, the Mongols from the, a lot of folks have tried it with very limited, if any, success in Afghanistan. Afghanistan has always been a notoriously difficult place to control. The various factions and camps, tribal communities, and warlords do not like centralized government. They're highly suspicious and skeptical of and resistant to foreigners or foreign influence coming into their region. There's also, a certain economy, a certain drug economy that they're very protective of, or opium economy that they're very protective of. So, it's just all sorts of factors which had been happening throughout Afghanistan's history that led those of us who know to the conclusion that this was never going to work out, that we would reach this point eventually. Now, people, I think, are just stunned because it's just so embarrassing for obviously the U.S. government. It's embarrassing for the Biden administration. It's a very hot and soupy and messy exit that's taking place. You can argue that it's much messier than what happened in Vietnam in 1975. Now, after U.S. troop withdrawal from Vietnam in 1973, it took about 2 years before the North Vietnamese, the Vietnamese communists, took over the whole country, they had about about a 2-year sort of build up to that point where we had that dramatic evacuation of U.S. personnel from the U.S. Embassy in Saigon in 1975. So it was about 2 years. This took about weeks in Afghanistan. This was like weeks after U.S. troop withdrawal. We have the Taliban finally taking over the capital, and now we have this messy, very messy evacuation of U.S. military and other American government assets. Everything's happening very fast, and so you have about 6,000 troops, 6,000 U.S. troops. That's large. That's rather massive and significant. That means that they don't want to take any chances, and that also shows that everyone underestimated the speed and the dramatic fashion with which Taliban have raced through that country and gained full control of it. For one, the Biden administration, the U.S. government, placed too much confidence in a very, very and deeply corrupt Afghan government. So placed way too much confidence, and so that's one of the main reasons why you saw very little formal Afghan military resistance to the Taliban, because you have this very corrupt government. Everyone's looking out for their own. Everyone's been, on the take of the billions to trillions of dollars of American money that has circulated throughout Afghanistan since the American presence started 20 years ago. And so, folks, rank and file military, they knew that. They knew the government didn't care for them. So they were like, well, what are we protecting? We'll just let the Taliban come on in. And so that's with very little resistance. And that's what we're seeing right now unfolding today. 215-634-8065, 866-361-0900 if you want to talk about that or other events that are happening as well. 215-634-8065, 866-361-0900 here on Reality Check. Now, we just also, which starts to help everything else make sense about what's happening over there, because I just find this all fascinating, what's unfolding in Afghanistan. But earlier this morning, today, the Chinese government announcing that it will formally recognize the new conquering Taliban government as the legitimate government of Afghanistan. They will diplomatically recognize the Taliban government. That's a huge significant development. I don't know if many of you heard that, but that did come through this morning. The Chinese will keep its embassy intact and there and fully operational, running normally in Kabul. So you have a major country, a major economic and military power, and a major geopolitical rival to the United States saying that it will diplomatically recognize the Taliban government in Afghanistan. That is very, very huge. That's a big development. So not only does the Taliban get this vast territory back, it gets the opportunity to retake that territory. Now, don't forget, it wasn't the Biden administration that wanted this or negotiated this. This was the last administration. The Trump administration negotiated the final withdrawal of U.S. troops from Afghanistan. That was and this is what we got, and even gave a date. Hey, this is when we pull out finally. President Biden had no choice but to abide by that. He had to honor that agreement. And so this also explains, things start to make sense when you then see the Chinese announcement and the reason why Biden is trying to get out of Afghanistan as quickly as possible. He's not budging. He's like, I made the right decision, which he did, made the right decision. And so, a lot of people also are forgetting that we've been asking for this as an American public for over a decade now. One can make the argument that part of the reason Barack Obama, then a candidate in 2008, won the presidency is that he campaigned on the promise of us finally withdrawing from Afghanistan. That was part of the reason he won the presidency in 2008. There was a lot of anti-war sentiment throughout the electorate in the 2008 presidential election. He partly won on that. He won on the strength of that. You can make the argument, even to a degree, Trump in 2016 won on that same campaign promise. Too many troops there. We've wasted too much money. Time to remember, he was all about pulling them out. A lot of Republicans are forgetting while they're looking for an opportunity to criticize the Biden administration and the president's decision-making with the troop withdrawal. And, the president's going to have to take some political hits for this, because the president was just saying weeks ago, no way in the world that the Taliban will, we got a strong U.S.-trained Afghan military. They should be able to hold the line. Nah, they didn't. And so, he completely miscalculated on that forecast. And so he's going to take some political hits for that, of course. But at the end of the day, the Trump administration negotiated this. This is what they put together. This is what they constructed, this deal. And so the fact that the Chinese are going to remain there signals to us that there are some very significant economic interests at play. You'll definitely, the Chinese are there for, with a permanent presence. Probably see the Russians entering the picture very soon. Some collaboration between the Chinese and the Russians, both geopolitical rivals of the U.S. The U.S. is now shut out. And they're, one of the news items that's not reported on right now that we're not hearing a lot about is the over $1 trillion that we know of. This is an estimate. But there is over $1 trillion worth of rich mineral deposits that are currently untapped in Afghanistan. Minerals like iron, copper, gold, and the much more sought after lithium. Lithium is like the gold of the 21st century now, because we need lithium for batteries, particularly as we transition into more clean energy alternatives. You need lithium for batteries and battery storage, for all those electric vehicles, to store power for solar panels, to store power for uses of clean energy as we try to transition away from fossil fuels. The world tries to transition away from fossil fuels to total clean energy. As you need batteries to store that clean energy power. You need lithium to build those batteries. And China right now is the largest lithium producer in the world. It all makes sense that China wants a permanent relationship with the new Afghanistan government, with the Taliban, and wants a permanent presence in a place that has such rich, untapped deposits of lithium. So there's a big cash grab that's been negotiated. Wouldn't be surprised even if Trump found some way to quietly enrich himself from those deals, but China is leveraging that. And so the Taliban, not only does it get this vast new territory, or gets to retake this vast new territory, it now, you notice they've been very disciplined too. Taliban very disciplined this second round than they were the first time. They're not, I mean, it's still the Taliban, but I've noticed the very kind of quiet, somewhat professional way. They've been sort of just, pushing their way into permanent dominance. That's been interesting. And then when the Chinese announced that they were keeping their embassy there, that they were keeping diplomatic relations, I was like, okay, now it makes sense. Okay, I understand what's going on now. It's about some money about to be made. Some deals have been cut. Some serious deals have been cut. And it's just going to be really interesting to watch all that unfold. Let me get to Haraya and Ardmore, who's calling in for a reality check. Haraya?
Yes, good morning, Charles.
Good morning.
Charles, refresh my memory. Is it the Taliban or Al-Qaeda that was American created? And I mean, like when they had bin Laden was supposed to be helping America accomplish some type of mission. Which one of those entities was created by America, and then it got out of
created by America, but definitely they were already in existence, but supported by the U.S. government, U.S. military when the Russians were in Afghanistan. So we used Afghanistan as a proxy war to fight the Russians. We supplied the Mujahideen, that's what they were called at the time when they were fighting the Soviets, and they were the precursor to Al-Qaeda and Osama bin Laden. He was a part of that.
Okay.
That Mujahideen resistance to the Soviet Union when the Russians, remember when the Russians were in there in the late 70s and the 80s?
Right.
And you remember when like those movies like Rambo, when he flew into Afghanistan? Yeah, that was us supplying those groups and training those groups.
Okay. Now, the other thing is, let us not forget that Afghanistan is the lead source of heroin, and how much of an impact does it have on this opioid crisis pandemic that we have here? And I just wonder how many of those troops coming back are the ones that we see laying out on Kensington Avenue. You know,
that's a very good question. Yeah, I think you raise a good point, Harai. I don't think that's been explored enough, and so that's a good question. You know what I'll do is I'll ask like our roundtable panelists coming up in a few seconds.
All right, then, Charles. That was my
I appreciate that, Harai. I think some good thoughts from you, and some real good questions. Thank you for that.
All right, bye now.
All right, take care. Be safe out there. Okay, let's take a break. When we come back on the other side, we'll get into our roundtable edition, which we do every Monday. We got Dr. G.S. Potter and also David Love coming up next here on Reality Check. Stay tuned. We'll be right back.
As a father, I've done everything I can to protect my children. For my family, getting the COVID vaccine is about protecting the whole family now and in the future. That's why I'm making sure my children get the COVID vaccine and protect their health. For me, it's one less health risk to worry about. You have the power to finish this.
Visit pa.gov/COVID for more information. Paid for with Pennsylvania taxpayer dollars.
Hi, I'm Patty LaBelle. Now, cooking is all about time, like when it's time to add some salt, time to add some oregano, and when it's time to take it off the burner. Since we're all getting a little older, it's time to get screened for cancer. It could save your life, and it's easier than ever. We'll help you find a screening location that works for you at timetoscreen.org. It's just like cooking, honey. When it's time, it's time. Just call 1-855-53-SCREEN.
Brought to you by Cancer Care and the Community Oncology Alliance.
The WURD Radio newsletter, keeping you informed, engaged, and connected. Sign up by visiting WURDradio.com. Scroll to the bottom of the page and type your email address under Connect with Us. You'll receive the latest information on WURD Radio, messages from our president and CEO, Sarah Lomax Reese, exclusive articles and multimedia content, and resources. Stay informed with the WURD Radio newsletter. With Charles Ellison right now on WURD Radio and WURDradio.com.
WURD, Progressive Black Talk Media. Welcome back to Reality Check. It's time for our roundtable session, which we do every Monday around the same time. Here on Reality Check, we have our pool, our house of panelists, the roundtablists, who are contributors here to this program exclusively on WURD. Joining us now by Skype, you see him, is Dr. David Love. I don't know why I keep on you Dr. David Love, because you just so, but that's okay. I get the two doctors here, but David does teach at Rutgers. He teaches mass media journalism, among other things, at Rutgers. Also, he writes for a number of publications on the regular, including he has written for EcoWord, our EcoWord.com, our environmental justice journalism projects. Well, got some great stuff out of him. Then hope to get some stuff out of him in the future. But in the meantime, we'll get him on the roundtable session. Go to @David A. Love on Twitter for more there. David, how are you doing?
I'm doing well, Charles. Good to be with you.
All right, excellent. Also joining us is Dr. G.S. Potter, real doctor, real PhD, by the way. And she joins us. She's senior editor for thebnote.com, which is the companion magazine to this program, Reality Check, here on WURD. In fact, both her and I have something that will be dropping very shortly on thebnote.com to sort of make sense of what's happening in Afghanistan. So she's a regular contributor, longtime contributor to Reality Check, WURD. She joins us by phone. Jess, how are you doing?
I'm hanging in there. How you doing?
All right, excellent. Good to hear from you. See you both. So, Jess, I'm going to start with you. Just your initial thoughts on what's happening in Afghanistan. Not so surprised, are you?
No, not really. I think there's, at this point, more questions than answers. We knew we had to exit Afghanistan. We knew that was coming. That was a Trump-negotiated deal. We knew that Trump had released 5,000 Taliban forces in this kind of fake peace negotiation that he made with the Taliban, which excluded the Afghani government. So we knew the government was destabilized. It was being propped up by the Trump administration, and they had pretty much all their leadership and best brass out in the field conducting operations. So we knew we were pulling out, and we knew it was going to be messy. I think that there were definitely issues in how we pulled out, and we don't exactly know why or where or how this is all going down exactly. And I think two of the main failures that we're seeing right now is not only just potentially in how we responded in getting our allies and our troops out of there, but and also how that's being communicated to the public. Like yesterday, Jen Psaki was on vacation. We don't really have a consistent narrative coming out of the White House. We do have a lot of horror stories coming from the ground, but there really isn't kind of a leadership position being taken by the Biden administration, letting us know why it's happening the way it is right now.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's a very good point. Speak to that, David, too. I agree with GS on this. I think the big mistake, we had to pull out. We knew we were going to pull out. In fact, I think that there's a large segment of the American population, probably the majority of the American population, probably appreciates the fact that Biden is sticking with that decision. He's not communicating that well at all. There's no control over the media narrative, and you got to do that. You got to do that. You have whether it's not the most favorite thing to do, you still need to maintain some semblance of control, or at least you have to show that you're managing the communications around that crisis as much as possible. And the White House just seems like it's tapped out as far as that's concerned.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's very true. I mean, ultimately, Biden is going to have to take responsibility for this, even though this is a 20-year, $2 trillion mess. One could argue, because Bush and Rumsfeld and Cheney started it 20 years ago, it's their fault. But, you've had a succession of presidents, Democratic and Republican, who have kept this thing going. Mm-hmm. And while I do think that it is long overdue that Biden is getting the U.S. out of Afghanistan, I do think it's a matter of how it's done, and also, as you mentioned, the messaging, because if you don't communicate to people in the right way and really spell out what is at stake, what is going to be done, how it's going to be done, then you really leave the ground open for your adversaries, your opponents, to put it all on you. Mm-hmm. And yeah, while Biden is the person who is in office right now, ultimately it's his responsibility. I think that there are a number of things that he can do in terms of messaging, but also in terms of, the steps that he's taking right now to try to ameliorate, if that's possible, a really sticky, messy situation.
Right, exactly. Hey, GS, do you feel like Biden looks a bit like Carter in 1979 with the Iranian U.S. embassy hostage crisis that happened back then? And I mean, so I don't think that it's going to have any real impact. I think the impact on the 2022 elections is negligible from this. I don't think voters are going to be voting about Afghanistan and about the withdrawal. They'll probably forget about it by this time next year, once we get into full swing in that election cycle. However, it is something that could be resurrected and could be used to great effect in the 2024 election.
Yeah, definitely. I think that this bobble is going to have some legs on it, and I think it's important for two reasons. We're dealing with kind of two adversarial groups right now. There's the domestic front, and the Republicans are already capitalizing. You see Mitch McConnell and Trump out there talking about how he would have done things differently and how this is going to be a stain on their record. And I'm sure they're going to continue to use that. And there's probably going to be increasing unrest in the region and things that fall out down the line. This isn't just going to end here. We're going to see things, maybe even timed for certain election events, because that does happen. So we have to deal with the narrative on the home front, but I think also internationally we have other issues that are going to be complicating things. We had 7,000 international troops helping us out over there. What's happening to them? Right now, China's kind of running the global narrative, saying, the U.S. is a paper tiger. This is what we did to Vietnam. This is how we treat our troops. They're recognizing the Taliban as a legitimate entity. So I think there's going to be longer lasting consequences that might play out. It may or may not play out in 2022. I think it will be revived in 2024. But yeah, again, if Biden doesn't get a hold of the narrative, he's going to see a lot of the same consequences Carter's administration saw come election time.
Right. Yeah, Biden looks very much, David, Biden looks very much like, a little bit like Carter in 1979. Also, a little bit like LBJ back in the 60s, right, pre-Nixon, and because which was real kind of fascinating, kind of funny to watch, was where, okay, as all this drama is happening in Afghanistan, that's all unfolding. The Biden White House announces the largest increase in SNAP benefits in U.S. history, aka food stamps, right? Largest increase. It was like a 25% increase. It was something really significant. Basically, folks who rely on SNAP are about to get a pleasant surprise if they haven't heard already. That was a big announcement over the weekend. Obviously, that was overwhelmed by everyone watching what was happening or transpiring in Afghanistan. But that's kind of like Lyndon B. Johnson with his war on poverty. He was trying to use the war on poverty as a way, and the investments in that as a way to deflect people from looking at the fiasco that was evolving in Vietnam.
Yeah, very good point. And it's pretty clear that the parallels are there. And people like Dr. King talked about this issue of having these wars, these exploits abroad, and that taking away from the ability of the country to address its social problems. And there's no question that LBJ was really saddled, really cursed by this war that he just wouldn't get rid of. He surrounded himself by these people who just they wanted to keep it going, and because of that really, I think, ruined his presidency, and more importantly, it really prevented him from being able to wage this war on poverty. Because when you're devoting so many resources to, this wasteful violence, war, killing people, armaments, that's resources that you can't devote to the betterment of society. And I think it's laudable that Biden is trying to do some things to, really show the positive role that government can play in people's lives. I think this announcement with the SNAP benefits, I think it's important because it shows people how government can directly impact their lives in a positive way. It also, I think, speaks to the mass deprivation and poverty and food deprivation, hunger that is taking place in this country. And it's important for us to actually acknowledge that. So I think that along with this announcement, as well as, the monthly child tax credits, what he's been doing during the pandemic, hopefully what he will do with student loan debt and other issues, it really speaks to some positive developments. But, we'll have to see what happens.
Yeah. See, good point from David, because actually this could be different from, say, LBJ or Carter. If Biden, right, GS, were to just emphasize that, hey, you know what? The main reason he could have did this over the weekend. He could have established this over the weekend and sort of brought some of that public sentiment over to his side, and ignoring the messiness of that withdrawal and evacuation, and by saying that, like, see, this is the main reason we need to pull out of Afghanistan, because it's time we make investments here back home. I want to put these trillions of dollars into things like SNAP benefits because we have concerns about rising hunger and malnutrition taking place, especially during pandemic. I want to make investments in I want to bolster the social safety net, especially during pandemic. We need infrastructure. We need to make investments in this. So yeah, I understand this situation over in Afghanistan does not look good, but you know what? It's not going to be our problem anymore because we're going to make investments in the important things. He had an opportunity to say that over the weekend. Just say that. And he didn't.
Right. Yeah, I think it's a couple things. There's a failure of the communications department, right? Like, this is a narrative that they should have stretched out from the beginning. Like, we know it's going to be messy. This is how it's going to be messy. This is why the risk is worth it. This is why we need to do it. So when we got to this, everybody would have been prepped and already known what to say and what to think, pretty much, because the government and the propaganda machines already told them how to do that. I think the SNAP increases were important, but I think there's this overriding theme that's kind of running through all of them that I think everybody should be aware of, and it should pretty much scare everybody. Like, one of the reasons we could not win or build anything in Afghanistan is because we don't have a strong ground game. We don't get to know the communities. We don't get to work within the cultures and the infrastructures, and we play these big, loud national and international shell games thinking that's going to win support and win actual structural reform, and it isn't. And I think that same mistake that we're making internationally, we're making here. So yeah, it's great to have SNAP benefits. It's great to pass rental assistance or whatever. It's great to have infrastructure. But that game isn't getting to the ground. We see that the people that need the rental assistance, those communities, just like communities in Afghanistan, aren't being listened to, aren't being spoken to, aren't being built bridges with, and that's allowing the insurgents here in the GOP to actually start gaining ground and gaining footing. So we've seen it even in the Nina Turner race. She had such a huge lead, and she was running this large national campaign, but there was no ground being made in the actual communities that she needed to tap into to get voter support. So on the whole, we're losing ground wars that we don't need to be losing internationally and nationally, and the strategy around that needs to shift. And then ultimately here, we can talk about why people stuff like money and economics and infrastructure all day long, but at the end of the day, the real war that everybody's hiding from is what's going on with voting rights and electoral politics right now. So if we don't get there and, again, really have a hardcore ground game, then everything else we're talking about doesn't even really matter because the flooring's going to fall out from under us.
So some real good, strong points. GS David Love, let's hold on just a moment. We're going to take a break. We'll come back for more roundtable session. Going to shift on topics here on Reality Check. WURD 96.1 FM 900 AM, WURDradio.com, WURD TV, WURD app. Stay tuned. We'll be right back.
What's up, Philly? It's Sincerely Sarita. With so much uncertainty surrounding the upcoming school year, now is the time to take charge of your child's education and give them the tools to make learning fun and safe. Check out Commonwealth Charter Academy, which can make a difference in your child's life. Commonwealth Charter Academy, or CCA, is a K-12 public cyber charter school with nearly 20 years of experience providing a flexible, stable, online education in the comfort of your home. Enroll today at ccaeducate.me. Your child will receive 1, a world-class accredited education streamed directly into your home at no cost to you. 2, a laptop, headphones, assistance with accessing the internet and learning materials, all provided at no cost to you. 3, a safe learning environment with no bullying or security concerns. Join the nearly 2,500 students from Philly who already attend CCA. The school year begins September 8th. Enroll now at ccaeducate.me.
Oak Street Health Strawberry Mansion is hosting a Seniors Day Carnival at 2301 North 29th Street, Philadelphia, PA 19132 on Saturday, August 21st from 11 a.m. to 2 p.m. Enjoy music, games, food, and prizes as we celebrate our teams and the reopening of our Centers for Community Activities and Events. Oak Street Health is a network of primary care doctors for adults on Medicare, and we welcome all community members to join in on the fun and check out our center. Food and prizes limited to $15 per person.
The Black Words Book Club. Word Radio's conversation on books that explore the African American experience through social, economic, and environmental justice issues. Tune in the second Tuesday of every month on Evening Words with Nick Taliaferro, 4 p.m. till 7 p.m. The Black Words book for September is Race Against Time, The Politics of a Darkening America by Keith Boykin. Be sure to listen live, as Nick Taliaferro will hold a contest for a giveaway book bundle that consists of 4 titles from Kensington's Defina's Authors of Color's newest release. Don't miss it, Tuesday, September 14th on Evening Words with Nick Taliaferro. Attention for Word members. Get your copy and receive a 20% discount when you purchase at Harriet's Bookstore or Hakeem's Bookstore. For more information on the Black Words Book Club, visit wordradio.com. The Black Words Book Club is sponsored by Defina. Defina is an imprint of Kensington Publishing Corporation, America's independent publisher, concentrating on authors of color. Reality Check with Charles Ellison right now on Word Radio and wordradio.com.
Okay, we're back at it on our roundtable edition on WURD, Progressive Black Talk Media. We got Dr. David Love, who teaches at Rutgers University, also can't help myself, and also is a journalist, writes in a number of major publications at David A. Love. Also, Dr. G.S. Potter is also senior editor of the bnote.com, joins us as a regular contributor here on Reality Check WURD. David, I go to you on the census, and there's some fallout from that because of some of what we already knew what was going to happen. We knew that we were going to see rather significant population decline. I guess we didn't anticipate the type of decline or fall in white population like what we're seeing in this latest census count because of all of the obstruction of the Trump administration last year. So a lot of that obstruction didn't work. I mean, it didn't say, and that was the whole purpose of that obstruction. It was to stave off. It was to try to either flatten, prevent that decline from happening, just kind of maybe show population as flat, maybe show it grew by an inch. That didn't happen. We're still seeing that the declines in white population are so dramatic that even obstruction from the Trump administration, even basically infiltrating the Census Bureau and manipulating that as much as possible, that didn't even work.
It's true, but at the same time, I wonder how much the black and brown population was undercounted. They're saying that is a possibility that even despite all this, there was still an undercount. But yeah, on the one hand, we knew this was coming.
Right.
For years, we've been talking about this. This was coming. The impending minority status of white America, and it is rather dramatic. The fact this is the first time that white America is seeing a decline in its population, in its share of the population, 58%. And we know that it's only going to increase in the coming years. And I guess the question is, what do we do to prepare for this? I believe that these census numbers will be used by the white nationalists, the white supremacists, to prove their point that we're replacing them, and it's incumbent upon them to do whatever they can to maintain their political power, basically through, gerrymandering, making sure that black and brown and progressive white folks are unable to vote, and just, make sure that they continue this autocratic rule, to make sure that we are not able to express ourselves, that we are rendered invisible in politics and in society. I think it's also an opportunity for us to start to continue to build the relationships with like-minded people, and get out there and make sure that that our rights are intact, that we fight for what we need in the society, and voting rights, as GS had said. earlier, is really the most important thing right now. If
Right.
we don't get that, then we will be lost for years, for generations.
Right. That voting rights battle is really key, and really grim and unproductive point for white nationalists to make, but they're going to make it. And definitely Republicans are going to latch on to that because they feel like they need that right, GS. They feel like they need that dog whistle to keep them competitive in 2022, among other things that they'll be messing around with and playing with, the redistricting process, gerrymandering, obviously voting restrictions. They're going to use all that to, basically lean the table their way in 2022. What are you seeing out of this? I mean, there's also, one, I mean, I am curious about the extent of those undercounts of Black and Latino populations. I'm particularly concerned about the undercounts of the Black population because it just seems like there was a listener who made a really good point last week who tweeted out to me. She was like, how can the Black population be like, we've been 12, 13% of the population forever. It's just like, and she's like, that can't be right. Like it's and when we know that the census has been, since the days of slavery, has been used as a tool that's been weaponized against us. But I think it also presents an opportunity, right, GS? I mean, for some coalition building.
Yeah, I think there's again, there's always more than one front we have to wage a war on, but there's two strong fronts I think we need to wage a war on in terms of the census. The first is that we know another census is going to come in 10 years. Who knows if there's going to be a pandemic or not? I think we need to right now start building a new structure for conducting a census, especially during a pandemic, and we need to start crafting model legislation for how to push through that new way of doing things so the same thing doesn't happen if there's a Republican or a Confederate in office the next time we go through this. We have to keep an eye out on the gerrymandering and the new boundaries of how we organize around elections. That's going to be really important. But I think the big right here, right now thing we can do is get in front of the white nationalist narratives. What they're going to do with this is they're going to try and pit Black communities against Latino communities. Like I already seen articles coming out about how, Latinos are so Republican and they're helping the GOP redistrict right now, blah, blah, blah. The Latino community is very much not a monolith. You have Texas Latinos, you have Californian Latinos, you have Cubans, you have Mexicans. One of the things we have to do, I think, on the deeper work is really get a better handle on which communities are going left, which are going right, and why. We have to stop the disinformation campaigns that are being launched against these communities, and then we have to get in front of this continuing stupid, archaic narrative that Latinos are stealing Black people's jobs and things like that, so we can actually do the work of coalition building. Because if you go through our histories, when Black and Brown and Indigenous are together, we are very much an unstoppable force. So there are opportunities to build, but we're not going to be able to reach those opportunities unless we simultaneously counter the disinformation and the divisions that the white nationalists are going to use to pull us apart.
Yeah, I'd like to get your thoughts on that, David, too. Where in light of these census counts, obviously you're going to hear quite a bit. You're going to get a lot of static from white nationalists, but there's also a lot of, especially as we head into the 2022 elections, there's a lot of tensions that are happening between those non-white groups. And we even saw that, we see this playing itself out during census counts, and for example, there was, you saw this real heavy during the 2010 census where it's make sure you check off Black, as opposed to saying you're Caribbean or you're, there was this, real thick internal tensions within the Black diaspora communities over the census. And, with the box to check off, we're seeing that play out as far as between all these various non-white groups.
Mm-hmm. Yes, indeed. And I think, it's also important to realize that as the white nationalists will try to divide the different groups of color, I think there's also this possibility that as whites diminish in numbers, they may try to recruit folks and try to expand the definition of whiteness. I mean, there was a time when Italians and Irish, Eastern Europeans, and other folks were not considered white, and now all of a sudden they were. I think you'll see more of that. I think it's a possibility. And I think it's also necessary to realize that there are many folks in the Latinx community who are Black. So there's that intersectionality that, people cannot lose sight of.
No, exactly. We can't lose sight. Another thing too, GS, so real quick, going to, because at the same time we had the census, these latest census results released. Last week we also had, at the top of the week, we had that UN climate report released as well. It's not very rosy, the assessment, and what the planet is going through right now. But, we're going to see future census counts become much more controversial, much more disruptive because of climate crisis, right? And we're going to see, like, it's going to be important to track what's happening with populations, the trends, the displacements, movements of populations from one section of the world to another. That's part of the reason. That's one of the reasons climate crisis is what's really triggering, and the inability of countries in Central America to manage it. That's what's triggering a lot of migration across the U.S.-Mexico border now, right? So, this is going to be something that these two topics, population count, census, and climate crisis, are going to become interrelated.
Exactly. They already are interrelated, and it's going to hit in so many ways. It's like, well, how many house seats does Florida lose when it goes underwater? And what happens when we've seen the whole build the wall thing and how the white nationalists love to rally against immigration, and they're targeting Harris over it right now. Again, like you said, that is the result of climate crisis. It's something that not only rhetorically feeds into white nationalist rhetoric, but it helps them push policies that we don't want to see. So I think, again, that's a place where the Biden administration is doing a horrible job of getting in front of that narrative, and the tribalist dialogues we're having is even preventing our own communities from having, really international conversations about what is going on. We need to have the diaspora strong for a lot of reasons, but a couple of the biggest ones are so we can all fight back collectively against this global push for fascism and white nationalism that we're seeing around the world. We need to be able to talk to them to share information about climate change, about islands going underwater, about hurricane season, about how to get help to each other. When we have refugees coming through, especially climate refugees, where are they going to go? What states are going to take them? Is that going to start wars in between states? Because we've seen pockets of that already. And even in localities, like just urban areas that are going to be accepting different climate refugees, where's the money going to come from that? And how are we going to protect them? And when white nationalists want to do active harm? And then that feeds into the larger dialogue, even of the big lie, how they're even saying these are the people that Democrats are picking up to fuel their rolls for voter rolls. So there's a lot of fronts that we need to be able to counter, and we can't if we can't even have proper discussions of what happens outside of Philadelphia, let alone what happens outside of the United States, especially when we have people in our own group trying to say the diaspora is a threat to reparations and things like that. We really need to come together within our own diasporas and then connect so we can discuss how to come together against not just the national threat, but the international threats we're facing.
Hey, real quick, David, this is just a comment from a viewer on WURD TV. They make a good point from Junior Lee, and they were saying that we need to do a census do-over. So do you agree? I mean, and that's not, I'm not even sure like how possible that is. But we do need to do this. We need to, just like they did the Tokyo 2020 Olympics in 2021. We need to do the 2020 census in 2021.
Yeah, I'm all for that because I don't put any faith. I don't put any stock in any numbers that were tabulated during the Trump administration. Everything that was done during those 4 years are suspect at best. So yeah, I'm all for that. I don't know if it's going to happen,
right?
But if you can't put faith in the integrity of the data, then where are you? So yeah, I'm all for it.
David Love will get the last word. David Love, journalist, he's been joining us here. He's a regular Reality Check roundtableist, and Dr. G.S. Potter has been joining us by phone. Regular Reality Check contributor roundtableist, senior editor of thebno.com. Always good to talk with you both, and I'll see you next time. Thanks again. Be safe out there.
Stay safe, guys.
All right. Thanks a lot.
Excellent. Join WURD for the Summer of Freedom Neighborhood Love Tour. This year we celebrate West Oak Lane, Mantua, Northwest, and South Philly. Tiffany Bacon's broadcasting live from a different neighborhood each Friday from 10 a.m. to 12 noon. The next stop is West Oak Lane at the West Oak Lane Senior Center, 7210 Ogons Avenue. Win concert tickets, meet special guests, and stand with WURD. Be a part of the movement to amplify the voice of the Black community. Show your support and join or renew your 4WURD membership on site. That's the Summer of Freedom Neighborhood Love Tour at West Oak Lane Senior Center from 10 a.m. to 12 noon Friday, August 20th. Please be masked up when you arrive, and do get vaccinated if you haven't already before going out and about and mingling with other folks. It's for your own safety. It's for everyone else around you as well. All right, let's take a break. We'll be right back as we head into the 11 o'clock hour of Reality Check.
Build skills needed for employment through the Philadelphia Skills Forward Initiative, a free upskilling program for workers displaced by the pandemic, those whose jobs are at risk for automation, and Black and brown workers. Complete courses focused on digital literacy, career management, and professional skills for a successful career. Get started today at chamberphl.com.
Jefferson Health offers no-cost COVID-19 testing sites at St. Raymond of Pinafort Church. Testing is on Thursdays and Saturdays. A second testing location has been added at Richard Allen Preparatory Charter School. Testing is on Wednesdays and Fridays. For testing hours and more information, visit jeffersonhealth.org/community testing.
WURD Founders Day. Don't miss our annual Founders Day live broadcast and celebration, Thursday, August 26th, honoring the life and legacy of our founder, Walter P. Lomax Jr., MD, featuring a very special broadcast of a ceremonial street naming for Dr. Lomax from 11 a.m. till 1 p.m. at 1800 Wharton Street, the site of his first medical center. Hosted by Charles Ellison. The day will also include a series of virtual panels and conversations exploring health, wealth, and independent media. Start or renew your 4WURD membership on Founders Day at the special discounted rate of just $80. For more information about WURD Founders Day, visit WURDradio.com. WURD Radio Founders Day is brought to you by Pico, Keystone First, Bank of America, Ready Set Philly, Comcast, Brown's Family ShopRite, Temple University, and Councilmember Kenyatta Johnson, 2nd District. Be there this Friday at the Summer of Freedom Neighborhood Love Tour and stand with WURD Radio to amplify voices of the Black community as a digital 4WURD member for as low as $5 per month and receive a free gift for signing up. We'll see you on Friday and join Tiffany Bacon from 10 a.m. till noon at the West Oak Lane Senior Center, 7210 Ogons Avenue, or visit WURDradio.com. Start or renew your 4WURD membership today. This is WURD Radio, 96.1 FM and 900 AM WURD Philadelphia. Streaming live on WURDradio.com, the WURD Radio app, or watch live on WURD TV via Facebook and YouTube. WURD Radio, independent Black media. Reality Check with Charles Ellison. Right now on WURD Radio and WURDRadio.com.
WURD, Progressive Black Talk Media. Welcome back to the Monday edition of WURD. That's your daily dose of public affairs from Philadelphia to Washington, D.C. We're here live on 96.1 FM, 900 AM in Philadelphia proper, but throughout the nation, throughout the world. We are listened to widely on WURDRadio.com and watched on WURD TV, also on WURD app as well. Joining us now is Tom Aminta, formerly serving with the 75th Army 75th Army Ranger Regiment. He did a couple of tours in Afghanistan, served for 5 years in the 75th. He is also co-author of the latest book. This book is entitled The 20-Year War, a photojournal dedicated to veterans of the global war on terror and their stories. Also, Tom recently was interviewed in the Washington Post, and he was saying, "Why did my friend get blown up? For what?" He was talking about, the recent mess that's unfolding in Afghanistan. We're all watching that happen right now. So we invited Tom last minute. Really appreciate his time like this at such short notice, joining us here on Reality Check to talk about this. How are you doing, Tom?
Doing really well. I honestly wish that I had known that you guys were interested. I just left Philadelphia yesterday. Love the city. Was there for work and then spent the weekend to just sort of hang out. So shout out to you and everyone in Philly. It's a great town.
All right. Thank you. Thank you for that. We'll get you next time. So we appreciate that.
Definitely.
So you're not too pleased about how this withdrawal is taking place in Afghanistan. Now, give us your initial thoughts. You had said that in the Washington Post, and you have friends that were injured, who lost their lives over there in Afghanistan as you were serving. So what are your first impressions right now of that pullout?
It's a mess. That's my first thought. And it really upsets me, and especially when I also see that the current administration has a totally different policy in Iraq, which was the other battlefield that we've been fighting on for so long. They said 3 weeks ago that they're going to keep advisors there, that they're going to keep intelligence sharing assets there. I don't know a veteran, and I've been talking to a lot of my fellow vets, since we started writing the 20-Year War book, which is 71 different veteran stories in our photojournal. And then since all this is going on with the Post stories, is friends and people I haven't connected in a while are reaching out. None of us want to be in Afghanistan. None of us have wanted to be in Afghanistan for a very long time. But there's a way to do things, and there is a way that risks not only our credibility in the world, which I think, when you see Afghanis trying to hold on to a C-17 as it's taking off and they're falling off the airplane, which is happening on the tarmac today right now. Mm-hmm. When you see the Taliban, which was the tacit government 20 years ago that gave Al-Qaeda free reign to do what they did and plan, resource, and ultimately execute 9/11, we're setting ourselves up for failure. And that's what's so frustrating. That's what makes me so angry, is that I don't see why we're doing it this way, why we're doing it now. I don't see why we're turning our back on our allies that are there. And I don't understand the logic to it, especially in the light of the other major battlefield we had. We're taking a totally different tactic.
If let's say, hypothetically, if the evacuations had happened before the American troop redeployment and pullout, do you think that would have given too much notice to the Taliban, maybe, or do you think that would have been the better way to go? Would that have put more people and even the Afghan government at that time in danger? I mean, so what would have been your plan if we had to do it all over again, if we had to do an evacuation pullout do-over?
Well, if we were going to do a do-over, like if the decision was made, we are absolutely leaving. If we're going to set that as the table stakes, then I think I've got to go all the way back to the previous administration and question why, when they did the peace deal with the Taliban, or the supposed peace deal, they didn't bring the current Afghani government to the table with it. That's the other thing about this. So in addition to spending 5 years active duty, having written the 20-Year War and gotten a lot of veteran stories about this, my degree is in political science with a focus on international relationships. And I can't help but think of all the education, all the school, when you talk about how you do that, and you can't have one side that has a vested interest not at the bargaining table where you're trying to talk to another. To give the the listeners a sort of shorthand, think of the Taliban as Palestine, and think of the former Afghani government now as Israel, at least in the minds of Americans when we were trying to hammer that out. This isn't a left or right issue in my mind. This is just a political fiasco across all party lines of misunderstanding the terrain and mismanaging it.
Do you feel as if, because there's been a lot of conversation about the now former Afghan government troops, U.S. trained, there was a lot of resources, a lot of time that was put into that training. Do you feel that they were really capable, truly capable of resisting or holding the line against Taliban forces? I mean, based on your experience there, I mean, you were 75th Ranger Regiment, so I'm sure you're kind of privy, you have some insights into that training. And I'm wondering, I mean, did they have the ability? I mean, because right now it feels as if, or from what we were seeing, I mean, you know more, obviously, it seems as if those troops really didn't have the spirit of fight in them because they felt like this government is corrupt to the core. Like, what exactly are we fighting for in this case?
I think that the corruption of the government is an excellent and extremely fair point, and one of the wrinkles in this. Were they and are they capable? The answer is absolutely. I think that you've got to take a step back and you've got to look at this less from the war and more from the affiliation, and that is everything in Afghanistan is done along tribal lines. It's not, they don't think of Afghanistan as a quote-unquote nation the way we in the West do. And again, going back to political mismanagement across all party lines, the Russians told us this, Charles. In 2002, when I stepped off a C-17 into Afghanistan as one of the first men of 2nd Ranger Battalion, our battalion, to go to war since Panama, I had a copy of the book, The Bear Went Over the Mountain, in my rucksack. That was the Russian War College assessment. And they constantly said dealing with the tribes is critical. They constantly were saying that these are the lessons that they learned, and we didn't learn it. So were they capable? Are they capable? Yes. But when their cultural ideology and how they see government and how they see the sort of respect of the human interaction is based on these local tribal leaders, and all these tribal leaders see the Americans pulling out, realize that they have no resources, and the Taliban is like, cut a deal with us, work with us, or die. When you start putting all these little factors together and you start putting all this nuance together, I think that on some levels it's not a fair question to, or a fair comparison to question their will to fight. When you start, I mean, our intel analysts have been screaming about this for decades. There's a level of fundamental lack of understanding, I think, on how to do things. And then when you take government corruption, mismanagement, especially from the Karzai regime when it was in power, troops not getting paid as the Afghanis, not being fed properly, working with people outside of their sort of tribal identity in a really haphazard way, you get this really toxic, caustic soup that I just don't think you can easily untangle in are they or aren't they capable of fighting?
Yeah,
I think they're capable, but I think there's a lot of subtext to it.
Tom, I think I've got you for another minute, but real quick, 30 seconds here. Do you feel like this is a different Taliban from the one you had engaged while doing 2 tours over there, the one that we engaged in 2001?
Yes, and not only that, they're telling us that. They're like, the old Taliban wasn't organized. We've been fighting for 20 years, is what they're saying this out in the press. We are ready. We are prepared. We have learned lessons from fighting the West. As they're calling themselves the Islamic Emirate of Afghanistan now. And that's the scariest thing to me. And that's the thing that just makes me so sad and makes me so angry is I really believe we'll be back because now they have 20 years of experience, all this American equipment, and they are going to, whatever the next level of ISIS is, it's going to start fermenting in Afghanistan and probably the tribal region of Pakistan because the Taliban is very ingrained in the Haqqani network as well. And that's a scary thought.
That is a frightening thought. We've been talking with Tom Aminta, 5-year member of the 75th Army Ranger Regiment. He did 2 combat tours for Operation Enduring Freedom, and he is co-author of the new book, The 20-Year War. Check it out when you get a chance. It's also a photo journal of those experiences in Afghanistan. Tom, thank you so much for the analysis, the assessment. We've got to bring you back. So. Especially with some of that geopolitical analysis. Love to have you back. We're trying to find more of that. And thank you for your service, man. I really appreciate it.
Well, Thank you so much for having me. I appreciate it, and I would love to be back anytime.
Excellent, excellent. All right, we'll take you up on that. Also, supposed to be joining us shortly is Tom's. We didn't get Tom for the full segment, but we do have, I think, Tom, we're going to have your co-author, the photographer, Bo Simmons, is supposed to be joining us very shortly here on Reality Check. He's the photographer for that book, The 20-Year War. It's a book that just recently dropped. Obviously, a lot of folks are talking about it. You can go to 20yearwar.com, and it's coming up, the official release date for that book. It will be on September 11th, 2021. That's the 20th anniversary of 9/11. So there'll be obviously a lot of conversation as we're talking about what's happening and transpiring in Afghanistan. So we're seeing if we can get Bo. In the meantime, phone lines remain open at 215-634-8065, 866-361-0900 here on Reality Check, 215-634-8065, 866-361-0900 here on Reality Check. I think we may have the opportunity to also talk with Bo Simmons, and just had reached out to these two at the very last minute. We were able to get them on exclusively here on Reality Check to talk about that. And Tom giving some real good analysis of things that are happening on the ground and what we should expect. And also as someone who, the 75th Ranger Regiment is no joke. So that's basically, it's at special forces level. So he's got some insights, and to say that at some point we'll be back before he left here, I think that one particular assessment stands out. And I'm hearing from other observers too who are saying that at some point, we'll have to be back in Afghanistan for one reason or the other. It's going to also be interesting to watch, as I was talking earlier. Do watch China and Russia very carefully, especially China. China just announcing today. I didn't get a chance to ask Tom about this, but I would have loved to have gotten his thought on it, but we had to let him go. How is China going to manage that relationship? What will that look like? Also, what will this new reconstituted Afghan government look like? And in light of, we had a listener who was calling in, I think made a real good point earlier on. You've got this massive illegal illicit drug trade, opium heroin trade that's the largest source of opium in the world in Afghanistan. So how is that going to influence things as far as the global heroin market? But something else that's not talked about as much, we need to talk about more: massive rich mineral deposits that have been untapped thus far in Afghanistan. The people who are in the know about those mineral deposits, and I suspect that deals were cut in light of that. So huge deposits of iron, also massive deposits of gold, and we all know how expensive gold can be. Copper still in use, and lithium. Lithium is a big deal. It's especially a big deal to China, who wants to maintain the corner on that global lithium market. So, rather than have one of your geopolitical rivals there, and this is where this is, just some, just an epic failure across the board, especially from the last administration and previous administrations on, when you look at it from a geopolitical and strategic point of view, if you're looking at it from that point of view, just an epic fail on all fronts, because, I'm not sure anyone kind of took into account or figured out, like, okay, well, we know one of our main geopolitical rivals, China, already has the corner on the lithium market. So, how can we take advantage of that to compete against it, especially when we're trying to reach a clean energy future? So those are things that, it is called Reality Check. I'm just keeping it real with you. Those are things that are not being discussed right now in those assessments and that analysis about what's transpiring or unfolding in Afghanistan and how that might impact us and influence us later on down the line. Also, there are thoughts, I was talking to Dr. Potter about this offline earlier as we were watching things over the weekend, thoughts about American intelligence. How come American intelligence did not see the Taliban advancing as rapidly and as quickly as it did in a matter of weeks following American troop withdrawal? So it's the same thing with American intelligence failing to see January 6th happening, or January 6th, the attack of that being as bad as it was, right? So, and I've seen, you could have looked on social media. if you're doing like deep dive intelligence and you're trying to see, okay, well, what's the Taliban saying? Well, just go on social media, see what they're saying online or on social media to get a sense of like how fast they're going to advance or how rapidly they're going to advance, or maybe how much they're going to bribe Afghan troops along the way. We can figure it out. And so clearly, you know, the assets that they claim that they will claim that they had on the ground in Afghanistan weren't working or were misleading them. So also it's going to be interesting to watch as we talk about this, it's going to be interesting to watch a new kind of, you had our guest just now just say, yes, a new kind of Taliban. They said they've learned lessons from 20 years of U.S. troops, of American presence in the country, and also other Western nations as well. So they've learned quite a bit. They're resourced. Now they're trained, or they're going to absorb large portions of the former Afghan government who have now U.S. trained troops. So it's going to be interesting to watch. But once again, as you see throughout history, like I gave you that little history lesson earlier on in Reality Check when we started today's Monday edition, and we've been getting the same lesson, all these other, including internal lessons amongst the Afghanis themselves. It doesn't like centralization. I'm not sure, like even this new reconstituted Taliban, how well will it keep control of its country? How well can it keep its country together? The jury's still out on that, because that's never been a successful mission in a place like Afghanistan, regardless of whom is there. So that'll all be fascinating to watch. I guess we couldn't get the co-author, Bo Simmons, so I'm not sure. Probably we'll just get him next time. But nevertheless, a good conversation, good talk with Tom Armenta, who's a co-author of this new book coming out, The 20-Year War. Let's take a break, and we'll be right back with more Reality Check.
I'm Bill Hite, Superintendent of the School District of Philadelphia. I'm excited to tell you that we will ring the bell on our first day of school on Tuesday, August 31st. Full day, in-person learning, 5 days a week. We've been preparing for a healthy and safe return to our schools. Learn more about our efforts at philasd.org/ringthebell. That's philasd.org/ringthebell. See you on August 31st.
The future depends on teachers. Every day, teachers are shaping our tomorrows, starting their students on journeys that will change the course of history. Right now, in a classroom somewhere in the United States, there's a teacher inspiring a future scientist who will make preventing pandemics their life's work, sharpening the mind of an aspiring environmentalist who will help combat climate change, and generating possibilities for a student who will be the first in their family to graduate college. It all starts with teachers who meet challenges with creativity, who reinvent education for the future, who work towards a school system that lifts up every child, regardless of race, income, or zip code, and who enable the full potential of our students, our communities, and our country. Explore a career that leaves a legacy you can be proud of. Shape the future. Teach. Learn more and receive free support at teach.org.
Are you looking to hire diverse talent? WURD has got you covered. We just launched a brand new job portal to help connect you with diverse talent in Philadelphia and beyond. If you would like to have your jobs featured on our job portal, give us a call at 215-425-7875 or send us an email at sales@wordradio.com. Check out the job portal today on our livelihood website at wordworks.com. That's WURDworks.com and click jobs.
Reality Check with Charles Ellison. Right now on WURD Radio and WURDradio.com.
WURD, Progressive Black Talk Media. Welcome back. We head into a CAP Corner, which we do once or twice a week in conjunction with our partners in Washington, D.C., the Center for American Progress. Go to AmericanProgress.org for more information from there. They always provide us with a good, healthy, steady stream of analysts and insights, expertise on a wide range of issues. Obviously, national security, geopolitics, a major topic of interest here on Reality Check WURD today, and just dominating the news cycle. Obviously, all weekend we've been watching events transpire in Afghanistan. Also, we are told that President Biden is scheduled to speak today on what's been happening in Afghanistan. I guess word is getting to him that he needs to do a little bit better job. His White House needs to do a little bit better job controlling the media narrative as best they can, even though, I mean, it is a messy situation in Afghanistan. Here to talk about that situation is Brian Katulis. We had him on before, national security expert at the Center for American Progress, and he joins us here on Reality Check once again. Brian, how are you doing?
Great to be with you.
Thanks so much, man. He's also on Skype. You can watch him on WURD TV as well, which I'm sure many of you are doing right now. Just your initial assessment of this withdrawal and now evacuation. A lot of folks, including the president himself, miscalculated on how fast, how swift the Taliban would move. Can we ask, Brian, like, how would anyone who's criticizing the president right now could have done it differently? Could it have been done differently and a little bit more orderly?
Oh, 100%. Biden botched this in many ways, but it's a shared error on the part of four presidents. If you go back to George W. Bush and even Barack Obama, Donald Trump, there's a lot of shared guilt here. But the biggest challenge, I think, was that Biden had set out a goal for himself that said he wanted an orderly withdrawal, and this is anything but that. And part of that is there was this disconnect between what I think was the important part, the diplomacy to try to get to a political settlement, and the gap between that diplomacy and the security events on the ground. And this summer, they simply didn't monitor that carefully enough or adjust their strategy. They just stuck with a timeline that put things in a situation that when the Taliban surged in this way, put them in this reactive crisis management mode. And not only does it not look good, you see the images coming from the country, it's also not good, period, for U.S. national security or our values. So we could have done things differently by recalibrating the pace of withdrawal. And then also, importantly, the thing that people aren't talking about is what was going on with the diplomacy with the Taliban.
You know, I know we don't want to stick too much on, you know, the political blame game, and that's what's happening, but because I think people are forgetting a couple of things here, right, Brian? One is that the American public's been asking for this for over a decade now. We've been clamoring. This has been like bipartisan across the board. We've been wanting to get out of Afghanistan. Some of the conversation and chatter, and I'm sure you're saying the same thing, is forgetting that. Like, it's like some of the conversation and chatter is like it's so messy. I guess it's just we as Americans, naturally, we're uncomfortable. You know, we don't mind losing every now and then, but I guess we want to lose in style. This is definitely not stylistic at all. So that's one. And then two, I mean, the Trump administration did negotiate this exit, this withdrawal, did leave the Afghani government out of it when it was noted. We just had a veteran and author was with the 75th Ranger Regiment on before you, and he was like, I don't understand why the Afghan government wasn't involved in these negotiations to begin with. Would that have made much of a difference?
Yeah, so on the first point, there's actually a lot more nuance there. We did polling at the Center for American Progress well before these events. And the American public essentially looked at Afghanistan and didn't see it in recent years. It was out of sight, out of mind. And I say this because it's quite a contrast to what we saw in Iraq, if you remember, in 2005, 2006. When Iraq was the #1 issue, it was the thing that I think helped propel Barack Obama to win the primary in 2008 and become president. On Afghanistan, what we found is that there actually was a plurality of support, and this was about a year and a half ago, for staying there, in part because the costs weren't too high. Now, when Biden announced it, true, 6 in 10 Americans supported his withdrawal, but the thing with American political attitudes, public attitudes on national security, is that they're quite fickle. They swing like a pendulum, and we'll see what happens after this past week. On your second point, which is the essential one, For the life of me, this is a big error on the part of the diplomats, because, as you know, we have too much of a military-centric, militarized approach to foreign policy. The diplomacy is as important. And the Afghan government itself was cut out of some of these negotiations, not all of them. It took a stance that actually didn't reflect power dynamics inside of the country. And our diplomats should have been less naive about this. And more importantly, as I stressed before, it should have been connected with some semblance of what our security and military strategy was. And that disconnect simply was ignored by both Donald Trump and I think now Joe Biden. And now we're in a much more complicated situation than need be.
Yeah, yeah. Was it? It's very interesting. Thanks for that polling data as well. So in terms of that nuance, that is going to be very important, kind of moving forward. And so, do you feel like, real quick, Brian, before we kind of get on to kind of where we go from here, I know you're mostly focused on the national security dimensions, but I'm just curious to get your thoughts on the political dimensions of this. And I mean, I'm seeing, but at best, a negligible impact on the 2022 elections as far as how this might especially affect Democrats. 2024, though, it could come back up.
It could. I mean, here's the challenge for Republicans, because their party is owned by Donald Trump. This policy, in essence, was a template set by Donald Trump. And unlike the Iraq War, which I mentioned 15 years ago, there was an architecture of political opposition among the Democrats against George W. Bush. You don't really have that right now. You have Republicans who, including Donald Trump himself, who are doing a 180 and offering criticisms even against the same policies that they espoused when Donald Trump was president. That's cynical, but that's politics. I suspect that the center of gravity in politics here, and I watch it, write about it in my work, it will remain here at home. Our own issues, our concern about our own democracy and the health of that democracy, the economy, the pandemic. But you never know, as we saw under Barack Obama in his second term. When he thought he had ended a war in Iraq, 2 years later, we were pulled back in, in part because ISIS rose, and that became a political issue here at home that prompted a policy action. So right now, I don't foresee, look, the Democrats, in my view, already face a tough field in 2022 because of gerrymandering and other things. Having negative news on the national security front just doesn't help. It would have been better to have handled this better, not botched what was hoped for an orderly withdrawal.
So moving forward, what's, I'm real curious. I mean, what's the American relationship with Afghanistan look like, or the American disposition towards Afghanistan, right? What does that look like? We had, like I was saying, we had Tom Memento on before you, and he was just saying in his final assessment, we will be back. Like, we're going to go back there. And he's like, I'm a bit frightened about our second time going back there because it's a different kind of Taliban. He's like, it's better trained. They've learned a lot of lessons from the past 20 years of us being there. We trained many of the military assets that they're now absorbing. He's like, I'm very frightened by what I see. I mean, so what are you saying?
So the first thing, obviously, three things I'd say about going forward. Number one, we got to get Americans out, which is what they're doing right now.
Yeah.
Get them out safely. And I would add to it the tens of thousands of Afghan partners who were translators and other things. And that's an abject failure, bipartisan, because it was recognized as an issue and we didn't execute on that. Second, you got to keep an eye on what not only the Taliban do, but then the potential that other extremist groups, terrorist networks, could exploit the instability there. A return to what we saw, like in parts of Iraq in 2013, 2014, or previously in Afghanistan. And yet, it makes it so much more harder now that the Taliban have swept into power using force to do that. And then the third thing, and I don't want to leave this to the sidelines because it's often missed, is that what we do diplomatically, I talked about this, the criticisms of what was missed diplomatically, but we need to work with countries in the region and countries that actually have connections and ties to all of the forces inside of Afghanistan. That includes Pakistan next door. That includes Qatar, which has been hosting the talks with the Taliban. That includes a range of Arab countries that we actually need to work with to try to help stabilize and understand the security situation, but then importantly, the power balance. And I think if the Taliban go the way they did back in the 1990s, I think you're likely to see an effort by the U.S. and others to isolate them, as well as China and perhaps even Russia to isolate them if Taliban become a threat for international instability.
You know, Brian, I have to ask then about China, because China announcing today that it's going to maintain diplomatic relations with the Taliban government in Afghanistan, that it will formally recognize it as a government, as a legitimate government. So they're running their embassy there in Kabul normally. You know, everything's like business as usual. And I find that fascinating. I find that interesting. It's a major geopolitical rival to the U.S. It's a major economy, major military. Obviously, now they have interest there post-U.S., post-American withdrawal. How does that complicate things? Or maybe, I don't know, maybe there's an opportunity somewhere.
Well, that's the thing I was suggesting, is that here in America, you know, there's a serious concern about China's rise. And both Trump and Biden have framed them as a competitor. But in a place like Afghanistan, there could be some shared common cause to try to stabilize the situation. The fact that they have not been a military combatant in that conflict could be a potential asset in trying to shape that. They're a country also that's geographically just nearer to Afghanistan. They're primarily concerned about any terrorist threats that might emerge from Afghanistan that impact their western region. So this is a case where, again, it's complicated geopolitics. China definitely is doing things that undermine our security. They hack us all the time in the cyberspace. But at the same time, you know, we're trying to work with them on other things like climate. And in this instance, in Afghanistan, I think it would be policy malpractice not to be trying to talk with China to figure out, okay, how do we actually stabilize and respond to this situation? I don't know if we agree with signing up to their program of recognizing the Taliban just yet. It really depends on the Taliban's actions.
Yeah, it really does depend on that. What about, you know, so I wonder about other players like Russia. I mean, does Russia return to Afghanistan? Maybe kind of partnering up with China. And I think about, you know, not just Russia, but India, you know, those that kind of batch of major geopolitical players in that region.
Yeah, again, I think they're already there. Again, we think about geopolitics, not just simply military troops or intelligence forces on the ground, but Russia has already hosted the Taliban in various peace conferences prior to this episode. So they're going to be a factor. The interesting thing to watch for is, if you noticed last week, as these events were unfolding in Afghanistan, President Biden announced a summit of democracies he wants to hold before the end of the year, to drive home his point that democracies are better than autocracies or authoritarian governments like China and Russia. And the events in Afghanistan and the likely response will actually raise some, I think, important questions, not only about women's rights and freedom, but then also the positioning of these other countries and what our status is in the world. And that's another aspect where I think, again, a focus on diplomacy as opposed to just military boots on the ground or how many troops that are there, having an actual strategy to foster the sort of values that we'd like to see play out in Afghanistan is a key part of the challenge we face here.
You know, in these geopolitical decisions and maneuvering and deployments, you know, I always feel like you always find out, even if you don't notice it at first, Brian, that there's an economic element. And one of the stories that keeps getting glossed over or missed is like these vast rich mineral deposits that are in Afghanistan. You know, iron, copper, gold, lithium. China's already, it corners the lithium market. And it's estimated, at least last estimate I saw was over $1 trillion worth of that. Not to mention that we got the opium market. Afghanistan being a huge producer of that. And I wonder what that might mean kind of domestically, especially when we talk about the opioid crisis here. So are you looking at that? Are we examining that, exploring that? I think that also explains one reason why China is not going anywhere anytime soon and feels that it can leverage a diplomatic presence or a permanent presence in Afghanistan because it's about to do business with the Taliban.
It could be. The challenge there, and people have talked about this for decades, literally, is actually having a functioning system with logistics and transport systems to get that out. So it's quite unlike the Arab Middle East, the Gulf states, where there's a lot of oil, and there's some relative stability there and access to ports and things like this. Afghanistan's landlocked. So I think I'm not discounting it as a factor. It's not an immediate factor. It could be a long-term goal, but there's such a long road between now and for China or any other country to get from here to there to actually export those minerals. And we're talking, many, many years. And that may be part of their long game. In a sense, China has been free riding on America's security footprint, imperfect though it was in Afghanistan. though now that it's not there, it'll be interesting to see how the chips fall.
Yeah, it really will. The the other thing too is that the message this evacuation sends to the world, what is it telegraphing, right, Brian? Especially when you're leaving so many American assets behind, people who are helping the Americans out, playing a support role, provided a logistical ecosystem for America to sustain that kind of presence for so long in Afghanistan, and then you're just kind of leaving all thousands of folks behind. And so how bad is that telegram to the rest of the world? Like, okay, well, this is what you get after being a partner, being an ally to America.
It's an awful message, and it's a message, unfortunately, that we've repeated under successive presidents. If you remember in Syria, under Donald Trump, the Syrian Kurds that fought with us against ISIS, he, in essence, tried to pull the plug pretty quickly. And though some people fought back against that, and there's still a modest U.S. presence there, it's not what it used to be. But it's sort of a repeated episode, which it's not good for America to do this. But it's also not good, I'd say, to stay endlessly without any plan in sight. And my point is, I'm supportive of drawing down wars and ending what some people have called forever wars. But if you don't actually end those conflicts, if you don't actually also end them in ways that leave people that are more inclined towards us and to work with us in power, then it actually puts us at a disadvantage, not only in those countries, but around the world. It sends a message that we're not in it to help those who were with us for years. So, yeah.
Brian Katulis, senior fellow at the Center for American Progress. He focuses on national security strategy, the Middle East, and counterterrorism. And go to AmericanProgress.org for more information. Also, a lot of his research and op-eds, some of his thoughts, insights, and analysis that he's shared with us here on Reality Check WURD today. Brian, it's good to have you back. So we got to have you back next time as we watch this situation continue. Obviously, there's more wrinkles to anticipate. So really appreciate your time this morning.
Sure. Let's hope it gets better. Thanks for having me.
Let's hope for that. All right, be safe.
See you.
Okay, let's take a break, and we'll be right back with more Reality Check.
In Philly, COVID-19 vaccines are safe, free, and effective. It protects you from contracting the COVID-19 virus. Vaccines do not change your DNA or contain microchips. Caribbean people are not immune to the deadly virus without COVID-19 vaccine shots, and it does not affect your immigration status. Join us for our back-to-school COVID-19 vaccination resource fair on Saturday, August 21st from 11 to 3 p.m. at Sturgis Recreation Center in Albany. Free food, school supplies, and vaccines. Visit www.caribbeancommunityinphiladelphia.com, Facebook or Instagram page.
Hey WURD family, did you hear? It's official. The Colorectal Cancer Alliance just announced the new age for colon cancer screenings has been officially lowered to age 45 for everyone. If you are 45 or older, it's time to get screened. Go to WURDradio.com and click on the Go to Know banner to register for your free at-home screening test. Did you know colon cancer is largely preventable with on-time screening? And there's a 90% survival rate when caught early. African Americans are 20% more likely to get colon cancer and about 40% more likely to die from it than most other groups. So for the next 3 months, you can go to WURDradio.com and click on the Go to Know banner for your free at-home screening test. A screening navigator will contact you to ask a few questions and help you get screened. It's that simple. Again, just go to WURDradio.com, click on the Go to Know banner, and fill out the form to request your free at-home screening test. Go to Know today.
The Black Words Book Club. WURD Radio's conversation on books that explore the African American experience through social, economic, and environmental justice issues. Tune in the second Tuesday of every month on Evening Words with Nick Taliaferro, 4 p.m. till 7 p.m. The Black Words book for September is Race Against Time, The Politics of a Darkening America by Keith Boykin. Be sure to listen live as Nick Taliaferro will hold a contest for a giveaway book bundle that consists of 4 titles from Kensington's Defina's Authors of Color's newest release. Don't miss it, Tuesday, September 14th on Evening Words with Nick Taliaferro. Attention for WURD members. Get your copy and receive a 20% discount when you purchase at Harriet's Bookstore or Hakeem's Bookstore. For more information on the Black Words Book Club, visit WURDradio.com. The Black Words Book Club is sponsored by Defina. Defina is an imprint of Kensington Publishing Corporation, America's independent publisher, concentrating on authors of color. Reality Check with Charles Ellison right now on WURD Radio and WURDradio.com.
Yeah, phone lines were open, 215-634-8065, 866-361-0900. Phone lines are open here on Reality Check, 215-634-8065, 866-361-0900 here on Reality Check. Okay. We now have 337 homicides, speaking of Afghanistan and places that are actually as lethal as Afghanistan. We have 337 homicides thus far in Philadelphia in our year 2021. 337 homicides. That's a lot. 26% above where we were this same time last year. This same time last year, we had 268 homicides. 268 homicides at the same time last year. We now have 337 homicides officially to date, according to the latest report from the Philadelphia Police Department. It updates these statistics daily, and so we will get the most updated. We'll see what happens overnight, today or overnight in Philadelphia, to see where, if it ends up with 338, 339, but we definitely always expect a murder in Philly every day. That is now a normal thing in Philly. It shouldn't be, but it is. There are now nearly 1,450 shooting victims. There have been 1,450 shooting victims. It's been a violent week because last week it was about 1,330 shooting victims, and that spiked considerably in the past week. We now have 1,449 shooting victims thus far in 2021. That is 22% higher than where it was of how many shooting victims we had last year in Philadelphia. But that's high. So we're nearing 1,500 shooting victims, nearly 1,500 people who've been non-fatally shot in the city of Philadelphia so far in 2021. And there have been over 2,500 shooting incidents, 2,525 shooting incidents thus far in Philadelphia. Now, that last report, there were 1,333. This was just the last week, as according to the Philadelphia Police Department, and then that spiked to 1,449. So that's a significant increase. And so, when we kind of do the math there to see like how much of an increase in non-fatal shooting victims that's been just in 1 week alone, that's about a 9% increase just in 1 week in the number of shooting victims of non-fatal shooting victims in the city of Philadelphia. So it's not looking good. Let's go to the phone lines, 215-634-8065, 866-361-0900 here on Reality Check. Let me go to Mr. Rick out of Germany, who's calling in for a reality check.
Okay, I got to be on my P's and Q's today because the last time you didn't want to hear any talk of civil war and muted my mic.
I didn't mute your mic. I don't, and I didn't not want to hear talk of civil war, Mr. Rick. That's not good. We've talked about like the risk of civil conflict. We want to avoid. We don't want to be defeatist and just say, okay, well, let's just hang it up. No, I mean, we want to avoid that. We want to do everything in our. That was the point that I was making. So I don't think that should be mischaracterized or misconstrued as I want to avoid talk of it. Of course, we're going to talk about it because we need to avoid it. Come up with a plan to avoid it. That was my point.
I live here in Germany with white Germans, Jewish Germans, and I have no real hatred for white people in my heart. But I come from America, and I've been paying strict attention since 1980. And what white rural America and white Western America and white Southern America has been preparing since the rise of Ronald Reagan is just unthinkable. And we take January 6th as a joke. We say, oh, they ought to do something about that.
Yeah.
They're saying we're going to ignore it. You got to talk about that.
Yeah.
And the killings in our community the killings in our community, you know, I supported Louis Farrakhan and the Million Man March. I showed up at that march.
I was there too.
There for that day.
I was there too. Yep.
But I know that he doesn't have the power that he claims to have from God, because things haven't changed. The killing hasn't stopped in our community with his voice.
Nope.
That's all I have for you today, man.
Yeah, I appreciate that. No, I do. And I think that we need to do two things here. We need to do them both simultaneously. We need to, one, we need to do everything within our power. We do have tools and capabilities at our disposal to stop that kind of disaster, to stop that kind of social destabilization, economic collapse, and civil conflict, that type of civil apocalypse from happening. Like, we have the capabilities to do that. We know, we even know, like, where it's like we see the threat, we know exactly where the threat lurks, where it hides. And it's just I think you are right to raise it. We should always raise it, but we should raise it also having a response plan. And so it's two-pronged. One is, we know where it lurks, we know where it's centered, we know where, like, its leaders are. Like, we've got, like, a lot more intelligence around it than we've ever had before. So, okay, so how do we stop it? How do we stop that? That's the whole point. I mean, the whole point is not to just say that it's there. Like, that's what my point was last week, and that's still my point now. I don't want to just talk about that the threats are there. Oh, the threats are there. The threats are here, and there's no, and nothing we can do about it. No, there's a lot we can do about it. It's just a matter of, okay, do we have as much energy, right? And do we have as much intellectual capability? Are we willing to put in the time and the resources and the muscle to respond adequately to those threats and stop them? A threat is not supposed to just exist for the purpose of letting it grow. A threat's not to just be there unopposed. Threats are always, a threat is always existing to be opposed by a counter. And so, like, what's our counter? We have to always be on our, like you said just now, your P's and Q's. Well, we need to be on our P's and Q's about the counter. I want to know about, and I want to talk about, and I want to come up with creative thinking around and collaborative thinking around the counterattack. Because I'm not just going to allow a threat to roll over me, or roll over my family, or roll over my community like that, or roll over my country for that matter. I'm not going to do that. And I think that we all need to be on the same page about that, because we understand it's an existential threat at that. Like, why are we going to stand back and just let the threat happen, roll all over us, and then also we know the threat is talking about wiping us out? Why do any of us want to stand back without a plan to respond to a threat like that? No, you fight to the end. You don't punk out. And so that's the point that, like, I was making last week, and I'm still going to make. That is literally the hill that I will die on. Like, I want to have a conversation about, I want to map out, how do you avoid this threat? How do you avoid this kind of conflict from ever happening to begin with? That's a fight. That's a real fight. So that can happen on one prong, while in the meantime, understanding that threats do metastasize, threats do grow, threats do get powerful. Threats can also acquire the capability to overrun. And so, yes, the second prong of that conversation is something we need to do simultaneously, is prepare for that moment that it does turn into a conflict. And then how do we defend ourselves in that moment? So no, I'm not being naive about that at all. I understand that, there's always the threat, there's always the risk of conflict, even when you least expect it. And so how do we prepare for that? But I think you can do that simultaneously. I believe you can do that simultaneously. And that's part of where I think our conversation, a lot of our popular and collective discourse around this is failing. Is we're not being, there's a lot of, and I'm not saying this is you, Mr. Rick, but there's a lot of lazy thinking around it. It's just like, oops, throw our hands up, can't do nothing. Well, but that threat is there, and people think it's cute to talk about how, like, white nationalists are going to take over the world. Like, it's not a cute conversation. It's defeatist. It's self-defeating. Like, the better conversation to have is, okay, we see this threat. It's looming. How do we prevent it from happening? Because prevention is also a form of protection. So how do we prevent it from happening so it doesn't impact us now and it doesn't impact our kids and grandkids down the line? Like, how do we, and even let's talk about how do we eliminate it? Because threats are there to be eliminated as well. Threats are there to be opposed, and threats are there to be eliminated. That's the nature of war, I'm told, and I've read. There's a threat, you have a counter, and you do everything in your power to eliminate it. That's what, you know what I mean? So it's the nature of war. And so, like, we're in a war, we're in this constant state of war, and it's constant, it's not going anywhere. So, you do what you can to eliminate that threat. While in the meantime, okay, well, if the threat comes to that point where it bubbles over, how do we then prepare for that? How do we then prepare, okay, here's a conflict, are we ready, for when that moment arrives? I think that that's a smart conversation to have. I believe that that is a smart conversation to have. And so folks are, under this false impression that I'm somewhat like naive in entering the conversation, or that I'm saying that I don't want to have a conversation about civil conflict. I definitely don't want to be on air because that's irresponsible of me. That's not a good look. That's not a good representation for the station to be encouraging civil conflict. I'm not going to do that because I don't think that that's necessary. And even some of the most, now I've never been in war, but I mean, I've had plenty of conversations. I've done plenty of reading about war. It's a hobby. I've been doing that since I was a kid. I know military history very well. And I've talked to a lot of people who are in that space. And they're like, the last thing you want to do is get into a conflict. It's actually the skilled strategist, the skilled general, the skilled soldier, well, really the skilled strategist in general, the one making those decisions, are the ones who avoid the war, like who avoid the shootout in the first place. That's the real skill. That's skill to be able to do that. So let's get skilled, y'all. Like, let's get skilled is all I'm trying to say. And I don't think there's anything wrong with that. I mean, unless there's some of you out there, which I'm sure there are, who want the conflict. Y'all want the pop-off. I don't want the pop-off. I don't want that kind of conflict. I don't want that kind of bloodshed. There's a lot of folks out here want bloodshed and don't know how to handle it. Or they want bloodshed, they want revolutions, but don't know how to run things. I mean, we've seen that throughout history too. It's like, you have the revolutions, you have the bloodshed, have the conflict, but don't know how to govern. Like, what's the point of that? So anyway, let me take it's a fascinating conversation, but it's an essential one, and we have to be much smarter in the way that we go about it. That's all I'm saying, and I don't think that there's anything wrong with that. And no, I'm not being naive, and you'd be surprised by what I know and kind of like where I stand on these sorts of things. So I think it's prevention is key. Prevention, as they say, is always the best medicine. But then if we get to that point of conflict, which should not happen in the first place, conflict, ultimate or eventual conflict, is not just a case of the threat overpowering you. Conflict also is a reflection of your failure. That means that we failed, because armed conflict is the last resort. That should be the last thing that happens. That's when everything fails. So, diplomacy and skilled strategy work and manipulating discourse and psyops and all that stuff, you're not a good strategist if you get to the point where you have to do armed conflict and you failed, and counter operations and, psychological warfare, cyber warfare, manipulate all, there's a whole bunch of different tools that are at our disposal, and things that we could be doing collectively to prevent that from ever getting into a conflict or getting to bloodshed, our blood especially, in the first place. I don't think there's anything wrong with having that conversation. All right, let's take a break, and we'll be right back with more Reality Check.
Hi, this is John.
Hi, this is Juanita, owners of JD's Auto Body and Painting. We're located at 6300 Wayne Avenue, right there at the intersection of Wayne and Washington Lane.
We really like to thank all you WURD listeners for the support that you've given our business, and we really hope to see you in the future.
JD, tell them about our products and services we have.
We have a new state-of-the-art paint shop along with our body shop and detail shop. We can help you with the dents and scratches from the winter season.
Come to JD's Auto Body and Painting. Come on out and check us out. We're still honoring that WURD 10% discount. Give us a call, 215-848-5949. Again, 215-848-5949.
Thanks again for supporting our business. We really appreciate you.
See you at JD's Auto Body and Painting.
Hey, Philly. Unless you're planning on enjoying summer vibes in the same sweatpants you wore for the past year, it's time to change things up. That's right, that Philly summer feeling is almost here. The city is ready, and so are all the shops, restaurants, and museums you've been missing. Get vaxxed, get dressed, and get back to all the things you love about Philadelphia. Go to ReadySetPhilly.com today to plan your triumphant return.
Be there this Friday at the Summer of Freedom Neighborhood Love Tour and stand with WURD Radio to amplify voices of the Black community as a digital 4WURD member for as low as $5 per month and receive a free gift for signing up. We'll see you on Friday and join Tiffany Bacon from 10 a.m. till noon at the West Oak Lane Senior Center, 7210 Ogontz Avenue, or visit WURDradio.com. Start or renew your 4WURD membership today. This is not a fad for us. We will not resume our regular programming when things die down. We're not black to help our bottom line or because it's politically correct. We're not joining a fight. This has been our fight, our message, our people. Black lives have always mattered here. We are undeniably, indefatigably, unapologetically, permanently Black Talk Media. WURD. This is WURD Radio. 96.1 FM. And 900 AM WURD Philadelphia. Black Talk Media. Reality Check with Charles Ellison right now on WURD Radio and WURDradio.com.
Okay, welcome back to Reality Check. WURD Progressive Black Talk Media as well. 96.1 FM, 900 AM, WURDradio.com, WURD TV, WURD app. Phone lines are open, phone lines wide open at 215-634-8065, 866-361-0900 here on Reality Check, 215-634-8065, 866-361-0900 here on Reality Check. Let's see here. Oh, let me go to Cliff out of Connecticut, who's calling in for Reality Check. Hey, Cliff, what's up? Excuse me.
Hey, Brother Charles, thanks for taking my call. Listen, before I get to my point, I want to go back on something that you said, briefly, real quick.
Okay,
talking about
go
the
ahead.
whole, you said from a moral standpoint that if Jesus was here, he would advise his followers to take the vaccine. Were you serious about that?
From a moral standpoint, I don't know if I use the word exact word. No, yeah, I did. Yeah, no, I think, yeah. I think from, in terms of the common good, in terms of, no one knows what Jesus would have thought at that time, but I think that it would have been an okay thing for, yes, it would have been an okay thing for him to stand by. But go ahead.
Okay, well, I just think that he has the power, you know what I mean? And I think he would definitely heal his followers and protect them. But that's just my opinion from a religious standpoint. But listen, the reason why
you said he would protect. I don't understand what you're saying. He would have said, yeah, he would have taken
with the
vaccine.
With the power that has manifested in him, those that believed in him, he would protect them from divine intervention. He would detect them without.
Yeah, but I think Jesus was also based on the history. Based on both the reading of the Bible and also the history of Jesus as a political revolutionary. He was a political radical, political revolution. He was much more political than he was religious at that time, and was just against fascism of the Roman Empire at that time. He was a very practical, pragmatic strategist as well, and he would have been like, okay, well, I know that, this is something that potentially the Roman Empire could use to wipe out my followers. Y'all need to take it. But anyway, go ahead. We can keep going. That's just speculation. That's just pure theorizing. Let's go into something real. Let's go into stuff happening today, real time.
Right. Okay. We'll follow that up later. But listen, the reason why I call, are you familiar with Harper's Ferry as it relates to the Civil War? John Brown, and particularly, have you ever heard of
very
Shields
familiar
Green?
with that history? Yeah, Harper's Ferry. Oh yeah.
Right. Shields Green. Are you familiar with him?
Shields Green.
Right.
I don't know why it's not ringing the bell, but go ahead. Yeah, go ahead. Keep talking.
Yeah. And this is the point I'm making in terms of critical race, and I never heard of the guy. So there's a movie that's called The Emperor. Okay, and I just got finished watching it, and I had no idea. Not to say I'm an expert in history, but this was a slave that freed himself, and then he joined up with John, what's the white John Brown, the white abolitionist, and then he met up with Frederick Douglass, and they're the ones that initially his group with others, had the battle at Harper's Ferry in West Virginia, which started the Civil War.
All right, okay. So I remember that. Go ahead.
Right, so that's just my whole point in terms of, the critical race theory, man, and how we don't know this. And trust me, I'm sure a majority of white people don't know this either. But again, this is history that's relevant that we're not aware of. But also let me end with this by saying that, we had to go, and I want to tie this in closing, with the brother that made the comment, and boy, did you lay into him, man. What's his name from Canada? If I'm not mistaken, on Friday?
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, so he was saying, and I want to try to blend both, segue with both of them, that down South Carolina, North Carolina, they were slaves. And so what they tried to do is to escape slavery and move north where they were free. So I think on Friday, the brother was saying that we still are fighting for justice and equality here in America. But, if you're tired of fighting that fight, then relocate, to another location similar to the slaves relocating and trying to make your way up north where you can have
I remember it was the brother from Chicago. Right. But you do remember what I was saying, though, right?
Oh, yeah. I remember definitely what you were saying, boy. You laid into that, brother, boy, for real.
No, but he was talking about. Marcus Garvey and other. Yeah, you're right. Other folks, who were leading that resistance down south were doing, and which I think was the appropriate thing to do. But folks had plans around that. It was plans for. My thing is, I think there's just to a point. I agree. It's just that if we're doing something like that, it has to be organized. It has to be structured. It has to be a plan
but I think,
that involves everyone. The kind of conversation I'm hearing, Cliff. And maybe that wasn't the conversation he was promoting, but the conversation, the way I heard it, and the way I hear other people is like, okay, well, if you've got the means to do so, time to move. And it's like,
right. So in other words, so I'm going back.
We need to come up with a collective strategy and plan here.
But everybody don't want to leave. Every black folk don't want to leave America, but yet we want to stay here.
Okay, but then for the folks who, maybe they don't want to leave because they don't have the resources. They're thinking about it and they're just thinking practically about it. Well, this is my home. I don't have the resources to go and move anywhere else. And plus, I don't know those people in other places, so I'm going to stay here. So, you come up. The bottom line is that's why, I think Garvey was genius. Garvey was coming up with a plan. Obviously it didn't work out. But he was being very structured and meticulous in the way he was going about it. That's all I'm saying. We need to be structured and meticulous in the way that we're planning these things, not just the half ass and just kind of leaving everyone to their own devices. And it's just, okay, hey, we'll see you when you get there. I just think that's that level of conversation. I think it's just it's intellectually it's a little lazy. And I think that it doesn't really kind of tap into the full power of our ability to do things and to do that on a mass scale and to do it in a very organized, structured fashion. That's all I'm saying.
I wouldn't say this in closing, Charles, on the other calls, but I would just end with this by saying that what he was saying, I think, in my opinion, when he was comparing those who want to stay here is the same comparison as those slaves that didn't want to be free, that wanted to stay on the plantation. They got it good here. It's going to be, it's going to be worse if you try to leave.
I think people are just being practical. I think that's unfair to characterize people like that as being slaves just because not everyone has the ability to. I know a lot of people who are saying, I'd love to move to a place like Ghana or Canada but I don't have the money to do so. So it's okay, well, maybe if someone would be like Garvey was and come up with a plan, or even like Harriet Tubman was like, okay, well, I'm going to do the best that I can, but she was very structured, and other leaders were very structured in the way they were going about it and raising money and trying to do that in an organized fashion. So it's like, but don't just like automatically peg people as slaves just because they're not down with, you know, your type of agenda. Like, there's a lot of, I've talked to a lot of people, and, you know, and there's a lot of people who are like, I mean, they just don't have the means to do so right now. So they're like, well, I'm home. This is where I am right now, and this is what I'm going to, like right now, I myself, you know, like, no, I don't have the means to just relocate my entire family to Ghana. I don't right now. So,
Wait, you know, Brother Charles,
so you know, so it's like, okay, well, what's the current situation that I'm in right now, and what am I going to make the, you know, what am I going to make the best, how do I make the best out of that situation?
Okay, can I just end with this, my last point? I think in order to make a physical change and a physical transition, you must first have a mental. Your mind must be mentally to make that transition.
Yeah.
So, like, for what I do, I don't have the means to relocate either to another country. However, what I won't do, based on the hypocrisy, I'm not going to salute the flag and sit there and pledge allegiance to it either. You understand what I'm saying? And I'm right here in America. I refuse to do that based on the fact that we're still fighting for racial equality and justice. Does that make a little bit of sense? Thank you.
Yeah, no, I mean, that makes sense. That definitely makes sense. I mean, that's folks' prerogative, right? And so I was just saying, I think, you know, I understand where people are headed with that, you know, like, okay, you know, especially in crisis times, and then it's like, okay, well, and the first sort of inclination is to, you know, jump and move off somewhere else. However, I think you do make a good historical point. Yeah, I mean, the South was a place where, you know, people had to leave it, had to escape from it. And then you had leaders, you had people who stepped in, and they did it in a very organized and structured fashion. And so that's, I think that on some area we're kind of on the same page, Cliff. But I'm just like, okay, if we're talking about, you know, the mass movement of populations, you know, in a search for, in a quest for relief and true justice, let's be structured and organized about the way that we go about that. That's what I'm saying. All right. Hey, thanks, Cliff. No, I appreciate that. So I think it was a good exchange. I think it's a good conversation. 215-634-8065-866-361-0900 here on Reality Check. 215-634-8065-866-361-0900 here on Reality Check. So, yes, a lot of thoughts that I have there, but I just want to go ahead and open up the phone line and see what everyone else thinks about it. 215-634-8065. 866-361-0900 here on Reality Check. The president is scheduled to speak at 3:45 today, 3:45 p.m. He's going to address the nation and talk to them about the situation in Afghanistan and also his reasoning behind sticking with that withdrawal. I mean, that withdrawal has already taken place. It's something he had to stick with anyway because it was a negotiated deal. It's an agreement. He has to pull out. The U.S. has to pull out of the country. So, you know, people are wondering what's next. And also, you know, he has to kind of give a new frame of exactly, you know, what the White House is going to do from this point forward. 215-6, but it, you know, definitely even national security experts, even like the one we just had on a moment ago, are like, you know, he definitely botched that entire withdrawal and evacuation. So now I guess is the point where he's going to reframe everything. 215-634-8065, 866-361-0900. Phone lines are open at 215-634-8065, 866-361-0900 here on Reality Check. Also some interesting conversations always on our WURD TV live stream, particularly on Facebook. You can go to facebook.com/4word. There's also youtube.com/onWURD. So more there, and you can join in on that conversation too. Thanks, Junior Lee, for just some really good thoughts. Yeah, we need a census do-over. I believe that Congress needs to authorize that, if I'm not mistaken. Could the IRS data on geographical locations of taxpayers be used to help determine more accurate population along with normal census collection practices? That's a very good question. It's a very good point as well. I do feel like the census collection methods are antiquated, and there are better ways that they could collect that data on a regular basis. And Junior Lee also asking, is the census process ever audited? Good morning. Well, now good afternoon to you, Diane Fassett. Appreciate that. Junior Lee going back to that conversation about the census, and he's saying, should ADOS, American descendants of slaves, be a identification on census instead of just black? No. The short answer to that, no. Just black. Just keep it black. So we have, like, I think nearly a quarter of the black population in the United States is black migrant. They're here. They're living here. Like, either you want the bolstered numbers or you don't. Like, when you want, I mean, that's just further, you're probably not saying that, Junior Lee, but I mean, that's just further fracturing of the black population. And then there's also a lot of blending between black Americans and black Caribbean, black Africans. Nothing wrong with that. It's just more, that just ends up with more black families. So, and more black children and more black population. So it's like, okay, but now we're going to splinter that all up. And then people are going to be in their feelings and all raw about it and all, salty because they're like, well, let's count of black people. It's like, well, y'all wanted to do the ADOS versus black Caribbean versus black. It's like, just black. Just keep it simple, all black. But anyway, I appreciate that. So I know some ADOS folks who were fighting for something like that, but, especially with respect to I do feel like, and we've had those conversations and we will have that conversation coming up on Wednesday at 10 a.m. about reparations. There'll be some experts, some nationally renowned experts who will be on here to talk about reparations, and they'll be addressing that question because there will need to be some distinctions as far as, African Americans or black Americans who were direct descent, like myself, who were direct descendants of the enslaved, had ancestors who were enslaved. And so, yeah, there's a certain level of benefit or reparation that should go to those direct descendants of the enslaved. And there's another set of benefits or reparation that goes to black people, not as perhaps in terms of the total tabulation, maybe not as financially bountiful as that which goes to the American descendants of the enslaved, but definitely a set of initiatives and programs that addresses the generations and centuries of systemic racism that they've also had to endure by virtue of them just simply being black in America. So there will have to be some distinctions. So there's going to be, like, let's take the Obama family, for example. Clearly, that's a clear case of blended black family because Barack Obama coming from, direct descendant of someone who's straight from Africa, from Kenya, and Michelle Obama being the direct descendant of folks who are formerly enslaved. Okay, well, they're going to get two separate sets of reparation benefits. So that conversation has taken place. And so it's a conversation I do think that has to be addressed. We should have that conversation and we should talk about it. But in terms of the census, we don't need to complicate it like that. It's pretty simple. Just stick with a black box. 215-634-8065, 866-361-0900 here on Reality Check. Raphael Suleiman going on with our conversation about Afghanistan, saying there is a definite connection between the war in Afghanistan and huge influxes of heroin into American cities, especially Kensington and Philly. These are organized crime networks that have been set up. The CIA is probably involved. It was involved in the crack cocaine market in Southern California to fund the wars in Central America in the 1980s. Fentanyl is a drug that comes from China. This is Raphael Suleiman going on. You must have a narco-chemist to prepare it to be used. So we know that Chinese triads, organized crime, are involved in the trade of this drug in America. So some interesting points from Raphael Suleiman. Samson Mohammed makes a real good point here too. I have to leave work to make a payment plan on tickets for a car I haven't had in 20 years. I don't think they're mine necessarily. I traded it in to the dealership for a Jeep in the year 2000. So they better be following up on wealthy folks who aren't paying taxes. I completely 100% agree with Samson Mohammed. I appreciate that. Thank you, Samson, for saying that. Let me go to George in Center City, who's calling in for a reality check. George, what's up?
Charles, how are you? Suleiman has the right idea of what we got a bigger problem. The worst thing Biden ever did was leave out of Afghanistan. This country is going to really be tricked up to the point of drugs. Just like when they left Vietnam, we had a big influx of, everything. The drugs, heroin was, it's just off the rickman. now that everybody knows how to.
He had to pull Biden. You know, Biden had to pull out though, because Trump's the one that negotiated that agreement. I mean,
well,
finalized.
Whoever pulled out, it went.
He had to win. I
Biden
mean, he could have did the pull out differently, but we had to pull out because, like,
Biden didn't have to do it.
Before him, he's the one who negotiated that.
He didn't have to do anything. He's the president. Okay, so let's get off that thing. He had to do.
But you also have to abide by international law. You can't defy an agreement that's created.
Well, however, the United States do what
using
they
the international law as a bait. I mean, it's already out in the public. It's like you got multiple parties and stakeholders. It's just something he had to do it.
Charles, stop being a stickler for rules when it comes to government. Government does what government wants to do. If he didn't want to do it, he didn't have to do it, and nobody was going to say nothing. They would have spoke for a few minutes, but that would have been it. It would have been over because it ain't even worth having a conversation over.
No better. But anyway, go ahead. It would have been no better than, like, it would have been the same thing as Trump. He would have been defying a multi-party international agreement that, by the way, I mean, other nations were involved in. It's basically a treaty.
Charles, who cares? Nobody in the world cares.
You raised it. I'm just telling you. I'm just saying.
Charles, you're too stickler for the rules, and you know how government works. Government works for the way
I'm not a stickler for the rules. I am a stickler for good governance and better governance. I don't think there's anything wrong with that. That's what we fight for.
Charles,
we fight for that in Philly.
No.
But go ahead.
What we fight for and what reality is two different things. I always tell you that. You always get naive like you don't know. It ain't like you haven't been around.
I'm just saying. Okay, so explain to me, George. Then what do? We just suck it up and just accept bad governance in perpetuity, and everything's just like
you vote the same people.
That's just the way it is.
Do they vote honest people in? They honest when they get there, and after a few terms, they become just like everybody else. That's too much of that conversation. The reason I said that is that they're going to infect this country with so much heroin. It's going to be ridiculous. I mean, heroin's going to be cheap, it's going to be good, and it's going to be plenty of it. And they're going to have plenty, just like they got the guns, now you got guns and drugs. It's called drugs and heroin. Yeah. I mean, it's just the way it is. Let me get on to another thing, Charles, that you keep saying that you were going to deal with and have, some answers for us, and it's been 2 months and we haven't got the answers yet. How is it that the inmates that beat up prison guards, every day is a prison guard going to the hospital, and nobody says anything? Their lousy union don't defend them. If a guard help another guard, if an inmate is beating a guard down and another one comes, then that guard gets reprimanded or fired. So we need somebody to come on with some type of answers. I mean, them sorry union reps that they got that represent the prison guards, they're sorry. I mean, they do what they're told. They part of the team. Boss say do this, do that, and they do it. They take their orders and they follow it out. Now, why they do it like that, I don't know. But you need to get somebody on here, Charles, because you had it going more than anybody about the prisons, and you said you was going to get to the bottom of it. And it's going on. We're going on, what, 2 months, 3 months now, and we haven't gotten any results of it? I mean, you wrote it down. You wrote it down. You told your listeners that you would deal with this problem because it was ridiculous. And it is ridiculous, and nobody does anything about it. Nobody cares, just like the sanitation workers. Nobody dealt with sanitation workers until you said what you had to say. Then they started cleaning the sanitation trash trucks down, wiping them down every night. But now, all of a sudden, they're stopped. You make people do what you want them to do, Charles, but it's called a follow-up on it. That's all. I mean, you put the right people on there, you ask them questions, then they go back with their tail between their legs and do what they're supposed to do. I don't think that is right. I mean, look at here. We had 17 females get shot. 14 of them was women that got shot in the head. I mean, and the famous thing, everybody on the street say, oh, no suspect. We have no suspect. Until they resolve these stories, I keep telling you, this is only the beginning. This killings and all this homicide stuff will get worse. Okay? They gave you what you asked for. You was one of the ones who supported the police commission to say, hey, she's a female, she's black, let's give her a chance. How much of a chance she's supposed to get, Charles? I mean, what is your deadline to say that?
So, you know, but George, what I've always said is that, like, yeah, I want her to perform. I've absolutely been critical of her, but I want to, and yeah, it's well past the honeymoon deadline. But I mean, at this stage, but I've always said, like, you need her to perform, but then you also want a police commissioner that works. If she's in that position, then you want the police commissioner to work. I mean, I don't want the police commissioner. I don't want any police commissioner. I don't care who it is to fail, particularly in a situation like this. So, you know, now I wasn't part of the like rah rally crowd around her. Like, oh wow, you know, I'm just like, I just want a police commissioner that works, is doing the job clearly. Yeah, I mean, I agree with you on that. Both you and I are on the same page. She's not exhibiting the level. It's already been way over a year, and it's like I'm not seeing that level of competence exhibited that you know, and I mean, a lot of it's communications, and she doesn't have any kind of communication style that to speak of. I mean, you know, in order to show the kind of urgency that's needed around a crisis like this. I've seen other police commissioners in other cities exhibit just through the communications and through the optics a sense of urgency style that I'm just not seeing from this one. I'm seeing her on Twitter the other day, and I'm like, she's doing selfies, smiling at some like block party. It's like, that's not what you need to be doing right now at this moment, doing block party selfies. You need to be like, if you're going to utilize those platforms and communications vehicles, you need to be looking like, you need to be transforming your whole image and looking urgent and looking like you're on the battlefield, you know, figuring out ways to push back or limit this violence. And she's not doing that. It's just like, oh, it's just another day at the office. That's the kind of look that she gives to me. And I think I do agree with you on this, George. We're well past the point of, you know, kind of giving her, you know, latitude, because she's, you know, I don't think there's anything wrong with her being a black woman leading a police department. And that shouldn't be really a part of the discussion. It's about performance. And competence and ability. So like right now, like I think that there's some things that she could be doing that she hasn't been doing. Like for example, just if I were her, I'd be like she should be a regular feature on WURD, and she's not. You know, like where she's a regular feature in other places, because that's the population. That's the population, and the population of influencers who have like direct influence over the community that you want to have those direct planning conversations with and try to figure this out. I'm not seeing that from her. All right. Oh, let me go to break. And also, everyone, don't forget that you need to stand with WURD. And you can join the WURD movement by buying or purchasing a digital membership today for as low as $5 per month. So there's this new digital membership. You can visit wordradio.com or call 215-425-7875 for more information. All right, let's take a break, and we'll be right back with more Reality Check.
Philadelphia Families, PHL Pre-K, the city's free quality pre-K program, is growing and now enrolling. Over 160 pre-K centers are ready to serve children this year. There are no income limits for this free pre-K program. Children who are 3 or 4 years old as of September 1 can enroll. Call 844-PHL-PRE-K or visit phlprek.org to learn more and find a quality pre-K center. That's 844-745-7735. This program is made possible by the Philadelphia Beverage Tax.
Oak Street Health, Strawberry Mansion, is hosting a Seniors Day Carnival at 2301 North 29th Street, Philadelphia, PA, 19132 on Saturday, August 21st from 11 a.m. to 2 p.m. Enjoy music, games, food, and prizes as we celebrate our teams and the reopening of our Centers for Community Activities and Events. Oak Street Health is a network of primary care doctors for adults on Medicare, and we welcome all community members to join in on the fun and check out our center. Food and prizes limited to $15 per person.
I heard the COVID-19 vaccine has...
And the thing I heard about the vaccine...
Sure, but do we really know about the long-term effects?
Did you read that thing on the internet about
He heard from his cousin that they don't...
Okay, you're hearing a lot of talk about the COVID-19 vaccines these days. So how do you find out if getting vaccinated is right for you? By talking to someone you already trust, your doctor or healthcare provider. They'll answer your questions so you can decide what's best for you and your family. Go to getvaccineanswers.org to find out more. That's getvaccineanswers.org. Brought to you by the Ad Council.
Reality Check with Charles Ellison right now on WURD Radio and WURDradio.com.
Okay, welcome back to Reality Check, 96.1 FM, 900 AM, WURDradio.com, WURD TV, WURD at WRD, Progressive Black Talk Media as well. Continue to go to youtube.com/onWURD, facebook.com/4word from World on Word TV. Joining us now is Dr. Nicolette Lewis-Saint, Executive Director of Healthcare Ready. And, she's on here regularly. We've been having this nonstop Vax chat here on Reality Check. We promise to bring more of those conversations as we kind of try to cut through a lot of the clutter and disinformation that's out there regarding vaccines and just trying to get us all through. We're trying to end the pandemic. That's literally what we're trying to do here is end the pandemic, and this is the best way to do it. Dr. Nicolette Lewis-Saint is joining us, and phone lines are open in case you have a question at 215-634-8065. So Dr. Nicolette Lewis-Saint is here. This is the expert. So hopefully y'all have a question for her. 215-634-8065, 866-361-0900 here on Reality Check. Dr. Lewis-Saint, always good to see you. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. Good to see
you. All right.
You.
Excellent, excellent. So talk to us about how overwhelmed hospitals are right now. What do you know, like what you're seeing nationwide, because you're plugged into those networks, and how bad could it get in the fall?
Yeah, so it's actually a very concerning situation for hospitals right now. Just to be, transparent, it's very difficult to get a sense of how well hospitals are doing with their surge from a single number, right? So you have to look at a number of things. So that's why oftentimes you see hospital beds or available hospital beds or available ICU beds as a measure of surge. And what that basically means is a hospital is designed to be able to absorb and care for and provide quality care for a set number of patients at a time. And that includes emergency departments, that includes chronic care, that includes, oncology cancer patients who may be receiving treatment. And so that's how they're designed. And so when we say surge, what that means is that there is a sudden influx and an increase in the number of patients that that hospital may have to deliver care to. And so depending on the type of care that's needed, that can stretch the hospital in a number of ways. One of them is related to the intensive care units or the critical care units, where the ratio of nurses and healthcare providers to the patient is lower because their needs are greater. Another measure is about ventilator usage, right? Because with some patients, for example, patients that have a respiratory illness like COVID, they're going to need help being able to breathe because they're not able to take in sufficient air on their own. And so you need ventilators. So that's another reason that we look at the number of ventilators that might be available. But remember that ventilators plug into things, specifically outlets and oxygen lines. And so even if you got a hospital, 30,000 ventilators, let's say, if they only have the ability to plug up 5,000, they're not going to be able to use the rest of that capacity. So we do look at things like that. We look at oxygen usage and ventilator usage and capacity. We look at a number of available beds. We look at ICU beds specifically. And what we're seeing is that in states like Florida, and a few others, they are completely saturated. Oklahoma is another example. The rate of ICU bed usage for COVID-19 patients specifically across the nation is going up.
Yeah.
But there are a handful of states that are of acute concern right now. We did see that Florida made that request to the federal government for ventilators, and that goes to what I was speaking to before. When you have an influx of COVID patients that are severely sick, they're going to need ventilators because they're going to need help breathing. But hospitals are only going to be able to absorb but so much of that. So it's very concerning right now. And we are very concerned because it is August. And that also means that not only are we looking at hurricanes and wildfires, we're also going to see a flu season that we did not see last year. And so a lot of that hospital bed capacity may need to be used for other things, specifically flu patients in the near future.
Yeah, we're not thinking about that. We're not thinking it's as if the only thing we're expecting hospitals to respond to or to absorb are COVID-19 patients. Now there's other types of ailments, diseases, chronic diseases, accidents.
Yeah, and
not even having it's just hospitals just exclusively designed for COVID-19. I literally, that's the feel that I get from this kind of conversation.
No, I think you're right. I think part of it is that we don't often think about the fact that these systems that we depend on can saturate, right?
Yeah.
You know, if you liken it, I'm a fan of analogies at times. If you think about the way a 5-year-old looks at a parent, right? They just assume that whatever they need is magically somehow provided, right? It's the Santa Claus effect almost, right? And then when they realize, wait, no, there are things that go into this. It is not infinite. It's not, you know, a constant real. And I think that's often how we treat hospitals and healthcare facilities, is the idea that they are there for our benefit and our purpose. And whenever we need them, in whatever way that we need them, they will be able to provide our support. And the reality is that these are finite resources driven by people who are maintaining a system and have been maintaining a system that has been very stretched for the better part of 2 years. So it's not that it's infinite. And I would encourage everyone to think about the people that they know, they love, they care about. And I'm sure that as you reflect on that, you can think of at least one person who's actively undergoing cancer treatment right now. You can think of at least one person that may have comorbidities that requires them to get routine care, not just well visits, but active monitoring by a healthcare provider. And if they don't get that, they will be hospitalized, whether it's for struggling to manage their diabetes, dealing with COPD, dealing with hypertension and cardiovascular disease. We all know at least one person in our network that's doing those two types of things. And they need the hospitals too. So part of this is about making sure that the people that we care about, when they need these systems, can plug into them and not be turned away.
Right. Do we know the extent to which people in those conditions are being turned away, or that the morbidity rates for those conditions, for those chronic diseases, have perhaps increased? I mean, do we have a full grasp on how much of an impact this condition of overwhelmed hospitals, of an overwhelmed health system, is having on other types of conditions and comorbidities? Do we know, like, have we seen like the spike, for example, in numbers of cancer deaths? Because I mean, that's got to have an impact on people's ability to get, regular, ongoing, decent cancer treatment. Is that, well, the hospital they go to, the medical facility they go to, is completely overwhelmed by COVID-19 patients, and they can't. The staff's not available, the resources, et cetera. They can't even go. They can't get the appointment or whatever. I mean, have we seen, do we have a full grasp of that?
I don't know that we have a full grasp, but we do have a grasp. We've started to look at numbers, and it's complicated for a few reasons. One is that, we do have some numbers because the CDC produces what's called an MMWR. Morbidity and Mortality Weekly Report. And that weekly report gives us a sense of who died and from what causes. And so when you look at the MMWRs from the last year and a half, you do see upticks in stroke-related deaths, in heart attack-related deaths. Now, here's what's difficult. It's hard to draw the straight line between who did not actively seek hospital care because they were afraid to go to the hospital versus who was turned away. Right? Okay. And so we know that there are these upticks. We know that there are large portions of the population who have not seen a doctor for a well visit in the last year and a half. We know that there are people who are reporting that they have not been managing their chronic conditions well in the last year and a half because they have not gone for refills and things of that nature. Yeah. The reality is that hospitals and health systems are going to do everything in their power to provide and deliver care, whether that means taking in someone at an emergency department, triaging them, and then trying to find an available bed for them somewhere else and moving them over by EMS, or trying to figure out ways to reconfigure their hospital to increase the number of beds. But the reality is that when we go to seek care, when we want our loved ones to seek care, we want them to be delivered the highest quality of care.
Yeah.
And so part of what we're talking about is the ability to maintain standards of care and not have to constantly shift into what we call crisis standards of care, which is what most hospitals are in right now, which means that they are operating with the lens that what we would consider the standard of care, the gold standard of care, cannot be delivered in these environments. So they have shifted to what we know as crisis standards to mean that we're going to do our absolute best to deliver high quality care under very constrained and resource-limited conditions.
This latest announcement about making the booster shot, a COVID-19 vaccine booster shot, available to the immunocompromised. That's what we're starting off with. Why not just simply announce booster shots for everyone? If we're able to do it for the immunocompromised, then let's just do it for everyone, and then maybe just be able to add a new layer of protection against these variants, because that's the worry that everyone's having. I know in your space, and we talked about this before too, Nicolette, the worry is that we have so many unvaccinated people out there that even that, as you know, we do have half the population now fully vaccinated, the variants are able to catch up, and then and that it's just over time, it's just going to make that vaccine less and less effective, because we still have so many people unvaccinated, making that virus mutate even more and more.
Right. So I think it's important for us to take a step back and remember some of the principles that we've talked about on the show when it comes to the purpose of vaccination and what a vaccine does and how it works. And so I want to start by doing that. And I know there have been all these questions about vaccine, but it's not really a vaccine because it's not a cure. So I want to try to address a couple things.
Or hold on, you know what, Nicolette, hold that thought real quick, because I did see someone, and I'm sorry about this, I just noticed her, Lola out of Jenkintown had a quick question for you before you go into that answer. Go ahead, Lola. Can you hear us?
Yeah. Yes, I can. Thanks, Charles. Thanks for taking my question, Dr. Lois Saint. I just wanted to ask you, how do you feel about the upcoming surge and some of us, going back to work? We just went back to work just for a couple of days a week last month, and someone already had tested positive, and then her interaction went around to like 12 or 13 people. And everybody was very concerned and had to go out on quarantining and stuff. So I was wondering, what are some of your suggestions, or what do you think is going to happen? And is this an area of concern?
Oh, you go ahead. Thank you, Lola.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you for that question. It is very much an area of concern for me. I will be transparent and say we have made some adjustments even within our organization so that we could make some very difficult decisions about who actually needed to be in the office and how to maintain a controlled environment. A lot of it has to do with how we're able to make sure that we are cleaning, disinfecting, sanitizing spaces, how we're spacing people, how we are doing routine testing if we are going to push people to go back into the office. And then also we have to think about the fact that for many of us, me included, when I would commute, I'd commute via public transportation. And so that's another risk. It's not just what happens in that environment, but how people are traveling to and from it as well. I think return to office can be done in some scenarios with the right controls and conditions. I do think that vaccination requirements, routine testing, even for those who are vaccinated, mask requirements indoors are all pieces of what would need to be solidly in place in order for a return to work to be successful. Like I said, the personal decision that we've been able to make for our organization is that we are not returning to work as of yet because the conditions do not allow for us to be able to have full staff on site safely. So we have been able to make some adjustments. But I think it really is about being able to ensure that those parameters are in place. And also, there's simple things like remembering we're a society that's really not been around each other for about a year and a half right now. So we're going to see an uptick in colds. We're going to see an uptick in those sorts of things as well. So making sure that we do have the ability to do symptom monitoring so that we can distinguish what might just truly be the sniffles or a cold versus what might be COVID should be put in place by the employer. So that's my view on it, and I think there are a lot of things to be concerned about, and I think there are a lot of questions to be asked because you do have to create this environment that can be safe enough for people to be able to be there, also recognizing that they're going to be going home to their families, and you don't want to be spreading infection to your loved ones as well.
Thank you for that question, Lola. Really appreciate it. Lola, unfortunately, I'm sorry, Nicolette. Unfortunately, I ran out of time, and I got to let you go. I know you were getting ready to go into another topic, another answer you were going to address, but we're going to have you back, and we're partnering up to try to deliver more of this conversation anyway. So folks, do stay tuned for more of this Vax Chat conversation because it's really important, and the situation is dire enough where it's compelled us to kind of take that necessary step. So you'll be hearing a lot more from Nicolette and people in her space, associates and colleagues of her very soon in the near future. So always appreciate Nicolette's presence. Dr. Nicolette Lewis-Saint is the Executive Director of Healthcare Ready. Go to healthcareready.org for more information. Thanks again. Always good talking.
Thank you. Be safe.
Too. Please be safe out there. All right. Let's take a break. When we come back, as we wrap up this Monday edition, phone lines are open. They remain open at 215-634-8065, 866-361-0900. Let's take a break. We'll be right back.
Build skills needed for employment through the Philadelphia Skills Forward Initiative, a free upskilling program for workers displaced by the pandemic, those whose jobs are at risk for automation, and Black and brown workers. Complete courses focused on digital literacy, career management, and professional skills for a successful career. Get started today at chamberphl.com. Hey WURD family, did you hear? It's official. The Colorectal Cancer Alliance just announced the new age for colon cancer screenings has been officially lowered to age 45 for everyone. If you are 45 or older, it's time to get screened. Go to WURDradio.com and click on the Go to Know banner to register for your free at-home screening test. Did you know colon cancer is largely preventable with on-time screening? And there's a 90% survival rate when caught early. African Americans are 20% more likely to get colon cancer and about 40% more likely to die from it than most other groups. So for the next 3 months, you can go to WURDradio.com and click on the Go to Know banner for your free at-home screening test. A screening navigator will contact you to ask a few questions and help you get screened. It's that simple. Again, just go to WURDradio.com, click on the Go to Know banner, and fill out the form to request your free at-home screening test. Go to Know today.
When times get dark, we can't see the help that's all around us. Maybe you're not sure how you'll make rent, or you lost your job. When you don't know where to turn, let 211 be your guiding light. Our guides are ready to connect you with the help you need.
211, how can I help you?
Call or visit 211.org. 211. Get connected. Get help. A message from United Way and the Ad Council.
Reality Check with Charles Ellison right now on WURD Radio and WURDradio.com.
215-634-8065, 866-361-0900 here on Reality Check. 215-634-8065, 866-361-0900 here on Reality Check. Phone lines are open. Olanian out of Nicetown is calling in for a Reality Check.
Good readings.
Greetings.
I wanted to ask the lady this question, but she had to go, and that's not a problem.
Okay.
When an affected person breathes out, will the virus molecules bind to the person's face mask? And if not, will it, if the person is in an enclosed room, will it repetitively be directed towards the person's mouth and nose until they can eventually get into the person's respiratory system? In other words, once you breathe out, isn't it going to come back and come back and come back until it gets through that?
Like bumping up against the mask?
Yeah, but
like
will it keep
basically rebreathing COVID particles in your mask.
Say it again?
It's like you're like rebreathing or recirculating. Your question is that can you recirculate COVID particles in your mask?
Yeah. Will it possibly come back into your nose or mouth continuously until it stops being discarded by the mask? You're constantly breathing, and so is everyone else.
Okay. Yeah, I don't know the question I don't know the answer offhand. I guess that would have been a good Nicolette. I can ask her at some point, Alania. I think I appreciate you raising it. I mean, I know that one of the myths that's been circulating, and I know that the this is a medical institution that's highly reputable. The Cleveland Clinic had addressed this, but there's a myth out there that wearing a mask will make you sick, and so Cleveland Clinic is saying that this is very short reading from them. There's been some speculation on social media that wearing a mask can cause you to rebreathe the carbon dioxide you exhale and make you sick. While inhaling high levels of carbon dioxide is dangerous, this is very unlikely to happen from wearing a cloth face mask, especially if you're only wearing it for short periods of time. However, there are some people who shouldn't wear cloth masks. This includes kids under age 2, anyone who has trouble breathing, or anyone who can't take the mask off without assistance. So that's just one of the myths that are out there. But let me ask. But I mean, that doesn't specifically address your question. But I'm going to ask Nicolette, and then probably raise it tomorrow.
In the right neighborhood, and yeah, definitely, because I believe the best thing to stop a virus is something that's similar to it, like a chemical, like a booster shot or whatever. Those things fight viruses. Cloth, I have my questions. All right,
okay. You're talking about the wisdom of. I think the mask is an extra. It's not. Based on the latest science that we have, is about 80% effective against protecting you against infection. That's very high. So I mean, you still want to using it. The mask, based on the science, all the evidence that we have, is still the best thing to do. I mean, it's the best thing to do in conjunction with being vaccinated.
Yeah, man. Because chemicals fight chemicals. Vaccinations fight like a king and queen. All right, thanks very much.
Hey, thanks so much, Lania. No, I appreciate that question. It's something I'll raise with her and just see. I don't know offhand. I just know that that's one of, but based on what the Cleveland Clinic was addressing, and they've been fact-checking a lot of these myths they've been saying on social media, circulating around online. That's what they came up with, and it may have partly come from what you were saying that was in the neighborhood. They were partly addressing that. I think that conversation, that speculation. 215. Thank you for that, though. I appreciate it. 215-634-8065, 866-361-0900 here on Reality Check. 215-634-8065, 866-361-0900 here on Reality Check. Evacuations in Kabul were halted because there's still ongoing security concerns. Thousands of Afghan civilians stormed the runway of the Hamid Karzai International Airport in their bid to flee Afghanistan, flee the country. There are not 6,000 troops there just yet. It is expected to reach 6,000 U.S. troops. There's still more on the way. They already are in the midst of deploying 1,000 paratroopers. They are on the way to that airport. So pretty much it's like a fortress of U.S. troops that are going to be at the Hamid Karzai International Airport. The Taliban has promised the Americans that they will not interfere with their evacuation plans. So far, but then there have been reports of a few people dying, being shot, perhaps trying to get into the airport. Maybe they were being. It's not clear on who shot them exactly, but so there's still like reports of chaos. There are reports also of Americans. Afghans dying because they're falling from planes. They're going onto the the tires of the wheels of airplanes, and then they're falling off like as the planes are lifting and going into the air. And so there's reports of many Afghans like dying as they're falling off planes, American military jets, and plunging to their death below. So it's just a scene of chaos at the airport right now. So we'll just continue to watch that. And also, I mean, right now Afghanistan is there. Definitely want to keep an eye on, as far as other national news. Want to keep an eye on what's happening as far as the in Texas, that voting rights battle that reached a dramatic point and basically ended. It was in the process of ending last week, and then also looking at voting rights back here. We're back in Washington, so we'll be watching those developments on Capitol Hill as well. We're about to wrap this Monday edition of Reality Check here on WURD. I believe The Source, right? The Source is coming up next here on WURD, so you definitely want to stay locked in. Remember, tomorrow, 10 a.m. sharp, we're going to be starting our panel discussion on critical race theory. In fact, WURD's very own Michael Cord will also be on that panel, among others, to talk about the battle over critical race theory. So we're going to be having that discussion. That's a special panel discussion that's also going to be featured. It's going to be feature of the Council of State Governments annual conference, which should have been in Toronto, Canada this year, but is obviously not for obvious reasons. So we're having that discussion, that panel tomorrow. So looking forward to that. That'll be at 10 o'clock, and that'll go on for about an hour and a half, and then we'll have continued reality check program. And then the next day, 10 o'clock on Wednesday, having a panel discussion on reparations. So reparations panel is also going to be on Wednesday, part of the Council of State Governments annual summit. So we're looking forward to that. So stay tuned in for more conversation there. So I'm Charles Ellison. You can reach me at Ellison Report on Twitter.com for more of the social media discourse. See Ellison at WURDradio.com if you want to reach me by email as well and share any information or get anything through to us. I want to thank Troy Wilmore as well. I want to thank him for keeping the radio trains running on time on the board of Still. I want to thank everyone else for watching and also our guests. We definitely appreciate it. Continue to stay tuned in to WURD here. WURD is Progressive Black Talk Media. For more of The Source that's coming up next, I'm Charles Ellison. I think we'll just go ahead and break out. In the meantime, until we talk with you tomorrow, have our critical race theory discussion. I want everyone in Philly and beyond to stay sharp, stay smart, but more importantly, stay safe out there. Everyone have a good rest of the day. All right, and God willing, I'll see you tomorrow, Tuesday, 10 a.m. sharp. Take care.